Okay.
The i6 is not OP.
It's your boy, Iron Armenian, coming at your life.
Oh my god.
There you
What
go.
a
I've ruined it,
fantastic way to
Miles.
start the stream.
You're happy, Miles. I've ruined it. Only 2 seconds in.
Like, geez, Iron.
Alright, I guess
Thanks,
we should
bro.
be saying...
No problem, brah.
I guess we should be saying hello. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the YouTuber podcast, hosted by our sexy many miles away. Today we have a couple of guests and a couple of topics. Miles, why don't we start introducing everyone around here?
Okay, sure. Let's give it a second here. So we've got 4 of us currently. We're waiting on a special guest here who could arrive any minute now. And so we've got myself many miles away, as Mike has already said. Mike Goes Boom, Space Cat, and Iron Armenian. And today we've got, like Mike said, we've got a few topics to discuss. And so the way we're going to do this is we're going to go through a few of these topics. And at the end of the stream, after we've covered all these topics, we're gonna do like a Q&A time. So that way you guys are going to be able to ask questions and submit them via the stream chat. And so that's basically the plan. Let's wait a few more minutes here for some more people to filter in, because I just started the stream, so... Plus...
Oh, that sounds good. I'm going to use this opportunity to introduce myself. I should have thought of something to say earlier. But yeah, it's your boy, Iron Armenian, known for making really good high-quality videos. Lots of extra effort and quality put into each individual video to make it extra special.
He's very famously known for his top 5 carrier landings.
Oh, you just gave me an idea for my next video. Thanks. There you go. I got to go back now.
I've been giving you this idea for the past 3 weeks or so.
Oh yeah, actually I forgot, you did give it a while ago, but I mean I've been a bit dry on ideas lately, and yeah, I reckon I could do that. Iron Armenian's top 5 carrier landings, of which number 1 will be the Avada 234C, which I've still not been able to land yet.
Wait. You just said YouTubers can run out of ideas? What? How is that possible? I thought you just had to do daily uploads of toy unboxings with Disney Channel somewhere in the channel.
We gotta go full Spider-Man Elsa.
Frozen mouse unboxing.
Frozen Spider-Man mouse Elsa 1945 gone wild. Number 5 will blow your mind.
Gotta be number 2. It's gotta be number 2 to blow your mind. Otherwise, they'll just watch the number 5. And
1945 Fuhrer bunker unboxing. You won't believe what
you do realize that this
burnt. That's something.
You do realize that this might end up going on Gaijin's website at some point.
Hello,
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Right, so that's Iron introduced. I guess I'll go next. Hello, you. I can't say this word because this is going to be a safe stream, but hello, lads. My name is Mike Goes Boom. If you don't know me just yet, I am this very German-esque guy with a weird accent who has been doing War Thunder videos for the past 3 or 4 years now. I don't even know anymore. War Thunder just eats away at your life. And that's pretty much it. I have some experience with doing Thunder League a couple of years ago. I was one of the official hosts. And now I'm here with these much more famous people than I am. I'm moving up in life. Yay!
I think the only person that's more famous than you here, Mike, is Iron. Everybody else is just plebs.
That's kind of sad as well.
No.
Mike, you put so much effort into your content, and then I'm just sitting here on 47,000 subs.
Wait, content? What content?
Yeah, that's the secret. You gotta actually make videos to get famous.
Do you need to upload to be a YouTuber? Which leads me to the next person, Space Cat. Hi.
Savage.
Top 5 anime portrayals.
Yeah, I'm dead, so I'm just not gonna introduce myself.
Crawling in
That's Space
my
Cat, for those of you
skin.
who don't know who he is.
Yeah, nobody knows who I am.
Remember you.
I was doing a
Alright.
Minecraft stream tomorrow with Beehive, please, thanks.
Our guest is ready to come in now.
Oh, perfect.
Let's let me introduce.
We're just massively pushing Miles right here. It's going to be so Twitch famous overnight.
I know, right?
Also, Keith, we've thrown you in at the deep end. We actually started live 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, sorry, I was watching Coronation Street.
No problem.
Priorities.
Sorry?
Priorities.
Oh, I
right.
have to eat, and watch Coronation Street because that's what old farts like me do.
For those of you guys who don't know who Keith is, he also goes by the name Scarper.
Watch a flame go down in chat. Watch the chat go down in flames. What?
So Scarper, what do you do?
Don't say it like that. Please watch the flame go down in chat. Sorry, go ahead.
So, what do you do at Gaijin?
Ah, now there's a question. Anything that's given to me, pretty much. I'm officially the international head of the community. Look after all the CMs and the mods and the community helpers and such like.
Okay.
Do a lot of translation stuff. Excuse my dog in the background.
No problem.
Actually, it's a question that came up a little bit earlier today. Do you also handle the Russian stuff?
Second, while I calm my dog down.
Miles, you have to change your title. Dog Destroy Stream.
This was supposed to be a podcast, but now it's going to be taken place by a dog.
Man, yeah, it's supposed to be a War from the Dog podcast.
I can't control when he starts to bark, I'm afraid. He doesn't do it very often.
It's perfectly fine.
Don't worry, Miles had some issues with...
Sorry, do I ever do any Russian stuff? What do you mean Russian stuff?
Like, do you handle any of the Russian community, or is it just everybody else?
Everybody else. The only time I really come into contact with the Russian community is in game, perhaps on occasion, or when they come across to the international side. But no, not really. Not any of the players as such. Anyway, I speak to the devs and the Russian community managers quite a lot, and their ordinates.
I see. Second here, I'm just turning off a couple of things.
Oh, but okay, never mind. I have to keep remembering that we can't swear this stream.
Yeah, we're trying to keep this as relatively viewer friendly as we can.
It's difficult because it's not so much about the odd bit of swearing. It's more about let's not go full on random swearing. That's more. So I wouldn't worry too much, guys.
Oh yeah, Scarper, trust me, you've never seen me on stream before.
Yeah, trust me, I have.
Oh, you have? Oh god, how am I not banned yet?
One of my little things I do is I just watch what's going on with Twitches and YouTube, and just see what's going on, because it's quite nice to be in touch with that. Now and again, I'll pop up and chat and say hi, guys. But
Okay, so I think now that we've got a certain number of people here, almost everybody's on YouTube. Okay, nice meme. Let's see here. Well, I guess we might as well just dive into the topics. Have you had a chance to look over what we were going to be talking about yet, Scarper?
Yeah, I've had a look at them, yeah.
Okay, cool. Alright, so our first topic today is going to be our thoughts on Destroyers and Gaijins enable mechanics, which is ironic considering the fact that you guys just started a new stage of naval testing today.
I know, right? We're selfish like that, trying to compete with you guys.
Somebody must have given them a tip off.
No, it's we've been waiting on the Fletcher, to be honest, to get finished and robust. So as soon as it's gone in a condition that we can show it to you guys, we've gone live with it. Wouldn't be much point going live with it midweek, so obviously it's over the weekend again. But the Fletcher's hot off the press. There's been a few silly changes in terms of things like our flag that we had on there initially was a bit strange. I don't know if any of you guys noticed it. So we had to get that done, because I'm sure that would upset some of our US viewers.
What was it?
Actually, before
was
we
that with the
start...
flag? Was it like Confederate or
Flag.
something?
It was something went wrong with it. We're not sure what it was. It only showed 9 stripes, for example, when there should be 13.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Honestly,
you wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it. But
yeah, honestly, now that
was
you
looking
mentioned
for
it,
it.
I probably will never be able to unsee that until it's fixed. Let's see here. By the way, Perez Orange Doom is not in this stream, so I don't know who you're referring to there, but okay. So I guess we'll kind of just do a sort of roundtable discussion. We'll just kind of go around and everybody can talk about their opinions on Naval Forces. Space Cat, why don't we start with you?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. Not gonna lie, I haven't played much of it, but I like the idea of bigger ships. I don't really like the idea of patrol boats, sorry, but it's a decent amount of fun, but I just like the bigger ships. I haven't played much of it though, so I can't really talk.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this is a good point, if you don't mind. Before we start, we should probably see who has played the latest round of CBT, so what is going on right at this moment, as we are recording this or streaming this.
I don't think I definitely haven't played any of it. I just got home, so.
Unfortunately, I haven't got a chance to try it either. I tried out the last test, but that was almost a month ago now.
So I'm guessing, besides Scarper maybe, who might have some secret access beforehand, I might be the only one then. I did play 2 games in the Fletcher class so far.
Okay. What do you think of it so far?
Well, I'm guessing I'm going to start off this argument by the viewpoint from the last CBT, so the one before this, that we had on the dev server. I think I pretty much did all of my points in the video that I have on my channel, but essentially, it was really fun. The gameplay was actually quite fun with destroyers. It brings a whole new dynamic that is not just AA on water, as people have taken to nicknaming the whole game mode. There are, of course, still a couple of problems with the whole balance between the torpedo boats and the destroyers. Generally, torpedo boats don't really have a chance when they get spotted by the destroyers, especially since those guns tend to one-shot them a lot. And even more so now in this new CBT, I've been one-shotting a lot of torpedo boats, which don't seem to be too happy about that. Problem, of course, was with the last CBT, we didn't have enough maps. You only had 1 map, and we only had 4 boats/ships total, so there wasn't really much content. It was more of a test of the gameplay mechanics themselves, which if you want to check out, you can probably still find the old news post.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of things have changed since then. If I'm not mistaken, they added now a, well, the gun sight locks, so you don't have to constantly manually correct it, although it seems to be a bit wobbly at the moment, to be honest. I'm not too sure what's going on. I'll have to get some more playtime in, but overall, destroyers are an addition that I wasn't expecting to be great, but they are. And the overall game changes are also massively, massively welcome. Both just wasn't going in the right direction a couple of months ago. But there's still a lot of work ahead. There's some bugs to fix, yes, and gameplay mechanics to iron out. Stuff like torpedoes, I think, in my own opinion at least, they are a little bit too slow and hard to use. Torpedo boats, of course, have a real issue, especially in realistic mode, where they don't get to reload the torpedoes at the moment, which, for example, in the Russian torpedo boat, which only has 2 torpedoes, makes it kind of useless after it drops its torpedoes, and multiple stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Also, I wanted to thank Orange Doom real quick for the host over Twitch. So, if you guys want to watch it from Orange's channel as well, if you can. I don't know if he's still banned or not. Go ahead and do that. And thank you, Orange Doom, for the follow as well.
Wait, Orange Doom got banned? I suppose that's a topic for a different day, but he got banned?
Yeah, we'll discuss it at a different time.
Ooh, juicy.
Let's see here. Yeah, like
you don't want to discuss some drama right now.
Preferably not.
No, let's get back on topic.
Oh, we got a shed load of stuff to get through.
I'm interested to know what you mean about wobbly. What was the wobbly idea that you had there? You felt it was wobbly.
Right, so especially the gun sight is a moment. Sometimes it just snaps randomly into different directions.
Right.
Especially when the boat, for example, gets unspotted, the gun sight just snaps forward, which is kind of annoying. Is
it related to movement of the water, for example? I mean,
not in that regard, not wobbly in that regard. I can't really explain too well because I don't know how it works exactly. But
okay. I'm interested in that. Yeah, and your torpedoes, you're saying they're too slow. I'm curious to know how many World War II torpedoes you've actually fired off.
Well, none. How many have you fired off?
Should we artificially boost them so they go faster? Is that what you said?
Here's that's the interesting thing with War Thunder, right? You guys have to find a balance between gameplay and realism.
I agree with that. We agree, but torpedoes tend to be like
they're very slow normally.
Maximum speed. They're set figures. You know that we've got to be aware of that. I know what throwing a lot of people off with torpedoes is that they're not homing torpedoes as such. You know, they don't send out sonar signals and home in on things, so they've had to get used to that kind of thing. But in terms of speed, I've actually found them to be quite believable. So not because I've experienced them either, but they just feel right to me. Are you saying you have to wait too long before they strike? Is that what you mean?
Kind of. I'm not saying that they feel unrealistically slow. It's just in terms of gameplay, the lead seems a bit excessive, especially when you are very close to an enemy vessel. Especially since you can't really.
One point perhaps we need to consider is different nations had different torpedoes that travelled at different speeds. So perhaps we need to be looking at that, but that might just complicate the issue, I guess.
So what you're saying is currently do the torpedoes of different nations
I don't know what the set. I'm just saying they feel right to me. I don't know what's programmed into it. I'm not a programmer.
All right.
But it's some, you know, I mean, it's of interest to me because it's not something I've considered. As far as I was concerned, they were just felt right to me, and that was fine. But I never considered that they may be too slow or they may be too fast. But
I don't know. From looking at it from a historical perspective, the speed of the torpedoes didn't really bother me at all. I felt that they were okay. I felt that they were just fine. I didn't see any issue with them, at least in the last test.
How did you compare when you were comparing them with, for example, aircraft launched torpedoes? Was it?
Well, they're definitely quicker. They definitely feel quicker than aircraft launched torpedoes, and that sounds to me historically accurate. They definitely do a lot more damage, as they should. I mean, we're talking like 500-600 millimeter torpedoes here.
But not only that, but you have aircraft launched torpedoes. I would say would probably be a bit heftier than normal ship launched ones for the sake that they're dropping into the water, and you know that could cause problems for them. But
yeah, I mean, you guys don't have the accuracy issues that could potentially come with that modeled into the game, but I mean, those are very it's a game at the end of the day, so I'm willing to overlook that.
Well, yeah, but you bear in mind that they do drown if you drop them.
That's true.
The wrong way. Yeah,
that's
so
true.
there is a degree of that in it, but I understand. But it's something that perhaps I'll have a look at and find out about. But it's not something I've ever considered as an issue. Have you fired torpedoes before from aircraft? I know you don't like the ship ones for speed, but what about the aircraft ones?
I do have dropped some from the aircraft, but honestly, against enemy boats, I've just found the bombs to be more effective, so I didn't really bother too much with aircraft.
That may be part of it. It's maybe just part of the learning process with torpedoes because they're a different dynamic, aren't they? Really.
The thing is,
I'm just throwing it out there, you know.
I'm just kind of thinking of the way. I'm really trying to think of the way of the point of view from a torpedo boat captain, right? For example, the Russian Bush only has 2 torpedoes. When you want to go against an enemy destroyer, first of all, you have to try not to be spotted in the first place, which is already hard enough. If the enemy destroyer captain even so much as looks at you, you are dead. If you just happen to find one that's engaged in battle, and he's going full speed, then you have to give massive amount of lead for the torpedo to hit. And then you have this problem where if you fire from too far away, it's very easy for the destroyer captain to simply do a very simple turn and avoid the torpedo completely.
They can, if they're not already moving, yes, they can, but it's not always a simple turn. It depends what's going on in terms of, for example, ice fields. But what I've found the best way to attack a destroyer with a torpedo boat is to watch your support, e.g. your other destroyers, keeping him busy, and he's focusing on them. and you can weave your way through. I mean, stalking a destroyer through the ice fields was great fun for me. I loved it. I loved that aspect of it.
Oh yeah, that was nice. That was very nice. I did
And
like
you know,
that.
make no mistake, there's guys out there that are killing destroyers with their boats, albeit that usually they end up dead as a result of it. But they're getting to a point where they're getting in close, firing their torpedoes, and trying to make an escape, usually unsuccessfully. But the point is they're managing to do it. So it is happening, and I think it's just a learning thing more than anything else.
I did have one time where I was captaining a destroyer myself, and the torpedo boat came in from the side while I was occupied with a enemy destroyer. And one thing I did actually quite like is that the torpedo boat had no problem outrunning the turning speed of my guns.
Outmaneuvering you.
Exactly. So the guy just dropped some depth charges right into my hull. It was rather funny.
I've never actually got close enough to a destroyer to notice whether or not the guy in the destroyer is able to shoot down onto my torpedo boat. I've never actually noticed whether that's a thing.
I think the main guns might not be able
That
to.
might be an interesting thing.
The main guns might not be able to reach down, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe
just
some of the
thinking
AA
maybe
guns and
that's a
stuff.
thing, and you know, you could sneak in under their bows and just really be a pain.
I mean, once you are right on the hull of the enemy destroyers, then you are mostly safe. The problem is until you get there, you're a huge XP pinata.
But that's the idea of killing him with your torpedoes before he can get around on you, isn't it? But hey, I know what you mean. Anyway, sorry, I'm tying up time over this.
No, it's fine. I made sure to dedicate a lot of time to this today, so not a big issue. The more discussion we have here, the better, I think. Yeah, just from my personal experience, I didn't have an issue with the whole destroyer on PT boat thing, considering the fact that the destroyers are built to kill PT boats. That's what I mean. It's in the name, destroyer. That was their original purpose when they were built.
Well, when they were created or when they were designed, back in the dark ages of the late 19th century, they were actually called torpedo boat destroyers, as I recall. And
that just got
that was their task, yeah.
And there was a huge issue back then, and there was a big fear that these small torpedo boats with these very powerful torpedoes could destroy dreadnoughts or battleships or very, very powerful warships or frigates or so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed something that would be easily able to keep pace with the battle or with the heavier ships, but still be able to defend them in close-in attacks from some of these smaller boats.
I think the later ones into the back half of World War I and into World War II, they were a different animal by that point, to be honest, you know, because they found further functionality. But yeah, they kept their maneuverability or their ability to, I mean, when you think the destroyer out of the larger naval vessels area is one of the fastest accelerating vehicle, if you like, in that range, you can understand why they kept their task.
Yeah, I mean, by the Second World War, destroyers had become very, very specialized in a lot of ways. Well,
of course, they went on to be submarine hunters as well, you know.
Submarine hunters, anti-aircraft boats.
Yep.
There was a number of tasks that destroyers could fulfill. And I think we're really only scratching the surface as to what destroyers can really do. However, I do realize that we are kind of limited by the amount of vessels that are actually in the game right now. Yeah. I've no doubt that you guys have more into development, seeing as that's kind of what you guys do on a regular basis.
No, of course we're going to stop there and not do it anymore. Of course. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Don't worry, guys. We just had you buy a bunch of packs, and we're not going to do anything with them.
That's it. We're done. We got enough money. Abandon ship.
Well, that was the other argument, wasn't it? Because we've got, let's say, a loud part of the community that say, "Oh, just remove torpedo boats, you know, fishing boats, and all that." And I think, well, no, we can't do that. Our whole pretext was to get the gunboats working and the torpedo boats working, and they do work, you know, despite all the A on water claims. They still work. They feel like what they should be, which is maneuverable, skiddy, daft, and all that. They're exactly what they should be. And when you look at historically, these smaller vessels did a hell of a lot more than the bigger vessels during the wars. That was the crazy thing, but nobody ever talks about them. You know, they were crucial to the battles in the North Atlantic. You know, these things were robust there. But I can understand the attraction. Hollywood bigs up battleships and Iwo Jima and all this sort of stuff. You know, they big all that stuff up, and all the poor guys that are actually losing arms and going into the thick of it with their knights, you know, or with their jousting devices, are getting ignored, and it's kind of sad in one way.
I do appreciate the fact that you guys are taking a look at an aspect of the Second World War that is largely forgotten.
Yeah.
Anytime.
It wasn't. Yeah, but it wasn't because of that, and I don't want you to lose sight of that. The valid reason we had, and we'd convinced ourselves, and we discussed it at great length, was it isn't easy to get something as huge as a battleship into a game like ours. It just isn't easy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps by playing destroyers, you're maybe feeling a bit of why that's the case. Because even in the maps are larger, yes, but you know, as you go bigger, you're going to need even larger and more time and slowing down time and all this sort of thing. But the reason we started there was because it was easier to get them into the game to start with, because they are basically a single tank, if you like. You know, it's like that scale.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very impressed in what BVV's done with the destroyers and his team. Absolutely amazed at how they feel and how they behave. And the interaction with the actual NVIDIA wave thing, you know, is absolutely amazing.
NVIDIA waveform.
Cries in AMD.
I do think that torpedo boats in the game have a place.
Yeah, they do.
I think that point enough has been proven already. I think what a lot of people were more concerned about was how they're going to fit into the overall naval combat side rather than the combined arms side. Because in let's say a combined arms battle on jungle with tanks, planes, and these torpedo boats, the torpedo boats make excellent AA vessels. They're fast, they're maneuverable, they can avoid the aircraft, and they've got heavy armament on them, so they can knock down anything coming at them.
They also make good scouting vessels as well. They're pretty good for scouting.
Thank you, Axel, for the subscription.
Ah, yeah. Miles, honestly, I think you're thinking a little bit too small here. Scarper, when can we expect to drive a mouse into a Yamato?
What a concept, eh? I think what we need to do... Well, I don't know if you've been following the videos out of Edinburgh, where they've been sailing the new Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier under the bridges. I don't know if you've seen those, but it barely fits, and they had to retract the mast a bit. So the occasion I can see that happening is when it's sailing under a bridge and there's a hole in the bridge and your mouse falls through onto it. Yeah, I guess that. But I don't think they're a toe-to-toe vehicle. They're more of a remote. I'm going to wallop the heck out your vehicle.
I can now imagine an aircraft carrier with a deck completely filled with mice, just acting as a huge destroyer with dozens of guns. That would be glorious.
Yeah. Well, look, we're working our way. We started at gunboats, torpedo boats. We're now into destroyers. We're looking at them. There's a branch of ships which we kind of hinted at that it seems to have been skipped by our community, which is a real shame because again these were workhorses. But we're talking about the Corvette class, which is between the destroyer and gunboat, also frigates. You know, there's sizes in between that as well, and these are things that people seem to have forgotten about. Again, these were well used and were all over the shop. So there's a lot of scope, and we've gone to destroyers now, which gives us the ability to perhaps look back and see what we can do within that, and then get that right, and maybe move on a bit more. But I'm not going to make any commitments for that. I don't know what the devs will decide to do in the end, but you know, the fact that they're doing it would say to me it's positive. And they've done a great job integrating them in. Changing the damage model for them was really clever trick.
Oh yeah, I agree. The new damage model mechanics, especially my biggest hats off to you guys is your complete rework of the weapon systems and the way they work.
It's amazing.
Oh, it's night and day between the old system and the new system. My biggest issue with the first tests, even with like the sub chasers and stuff like that, was the fact that I felt I was fighting my ship more than I was actually, using it to fight. And
what you talking about? Destroyers?
No, the sub chasers for the most part before the destroyers were implemented. Once the destroyers came in, it was
the medium-sized ones. I know the ones you mean. Yeah.
And because we were trying to control all the weapons at once, while like an interesting concept, it meant that you weren't always sure what your primary weapons that you really wanted to use were looking at. And oftentimes, because it was very difficult to tell where your primary weapons were looking, your primary weapons would say they would pass over a part of the ship that they're actually pointing at their own vessel, so they would have to raise the gun barrel to accommodate that and make sure they don't hit their own ship. But on the player screen, that's not totally obvious, so you may be trying to fire a salvo at the enemy and watch as half your shells go straight up into the air. I just found that supremely annoying, but once you guys completely reworked that, and with the new weapon system, the fact that the secondaries and the AA automatically
we've separated them. Yeah, we've separated them. Yeah, that's been key to it, and I know what you mean, because while you're firing away an enemy vessel which would initially be your machine guns because they get round quicker, meanwhile your main guns are still turning, aren't they? And it does get a bit strange.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is nice. It's nice how they've done that, I've got to admit. I am amazed at what they've done with that content, to be honest. It's quite incredible. But the optimism in me is really looking forward to us introducing other scenarios, other items, other things that are going to provide that interest. Ships are not like tanks or planes, they're not. You can't really throw them in a battle and say get on with it, like perhaps we did with the torpedo boats. But they have to have purpose, don't they? That's the key to them. They have to have a reason to be there. And I think that's where the interest is going to lie. For example, we've now started moving the cargo boats. They're no longer anchored, so you actually have to stalk your prey, for example. There's all sorts of stuff we can introduce, ultimately, I would say.
I wonder if Poland has a shoreline.
What?
This is inside joke where being German, I like to invade Poland a lot.
But from the shore? That's an interesting concept.
Plot twist!
Yeah, I heard they did that with Luxembourg once as well. They invaded it via sea. Well, was it Slovakia they did that?
Not sure, actually. You know how the mouse could fit the snorkel to go under rivers? I can now imagine just a shore invasion with mice.
Yeah. Well, what's the sea that's round Poland?
The Baltic Sea?
The Baltic?
Yeah.
Right, okay. I wasn't sure, and I was just wondering what
I think it's the Baltic Sea.
Was. Isn't that more like a big lake?
I don't know.
We're going to have to find out now and start to educate ourselves, aren't we, really?
Of course, now the chat's all saying, "Gib Danzig bag."
But I know Luxembourg's landlocked, so there's no way you could invade that by sea.
Just airdrop a mouse or two.
Watch me.
But yeah, actually, that's interesting because what you've got is an idea of like a D-Day thing, haven't you? Where your bigger vessels are giving a bit of cover for your landing ships and that sort of thing. So, I mean, who knows where we're going to go? But it all depends on what you guys give us in the way of, is this fun or is this boring as hell? I'll guarantee, I'm the kind of person that enjoys a game that's boring as hell. Flight Simulator, for example. Well, no, that's just me. Flight Simulator, for example. I'll program and prepare for a journey between Edinburgh Turnhouse Airport and Wick up the north of Scotland and fly it in real time just because I can. It's boring, but I can do it, so I'll do it. And that's kind of how I am with war games as well. I like all that preparation stuff, but let's be honest, the majority of us, they don't want to be fiddling about preparing for things. They want to be going in there and going. Exactly, and that's, we've got to get that temperature right. We don't want to kill the game mode. You know, we don't want to kill it because we've decided to go ultra realistic and you're going to turn that battleship in an hour's time and that sort of. We don't want to kill it, and that is our concern. You know.
Definitely.
That's kind of one thing I like about War Thunder is that you guys found a balance between realism and fun. Like, I don't really like armor-free combat because it takes too long to go from A to B to you shoot someone. Right. And in this game, you know, ARB, it might take 5 minutes to get to combat, but once you get there, it's realistic flight models.
It's an interesting one because it can be a bugbear for us as well, you know, because if a vehicle, whatever it is, whether it's an aircraft or a piece of armor or a ship or a boat or whatever, if one of those is not as heavy hitting as it says it should be in the History Channel, we're in real trouble, you know, and that becomes a problematic thing as well.
Does anybody else have anything really to add on this topic?
All right, before we move on then, this is something I've been sitting on for a little while. It's a little silly, but I'm going to go back to when you were talking about scenarios, and I thought everyone was always like, we want the Bismarck, we want Yamato, and you're like, go away with that stuff, we want to put PT boats in. But what if, wait, hear me out, kind of, are you familiar with Battlefield 1 and how its multiplayer worked?
Yes.
As in, what do they call it in that game?
Behemoths?
The Behemoths, that's it, yeah. One person from each enemy team is selected to be the, in quotation marks, behemoth, aka whatever, you know, big fancy ship that nation had.
Yeah, but the main object, the target, if you like.
That's the objective, you know, bring that thing down. And maybe there could be a couple of side objectives. That could be like...
Well, we talked about this. We talked about this back in the days of when we were finally coming clean with what we were doing, because we were at Gamescom in Cologne when we kind of said that we're going to do this now, and we were talking about this. And when you think about it, you've got such things as, I don't know, the Bismarck has to be escorted between 2 ports, for example, you know, from one port to another, those sort of things. You've got a bit of air defense, you've got some MTBs, and you've got destroyers, and maybe in the future we've got a light cruiser or something. But there is options for that. But the other aspect with the battleship concept, and I was thinking this myself, I had an idea myself, which doesn't happen very often, was where a player, you know how at the moment you've got artillery support for light tanks, for example. I was thinking, well, what about if a player earns some points in a smaller vessel and unlocks the main gun, one of the main guns on the Tirpitz, for example, and he then hops into that and does some damage. You know, the sky's the limit with this if it's what players want and if we can get to that point.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. Like, you want to evolve. You don't just want this to be like tank battles where it's like, all right, there's the enemy, go get him, boy. You actually want to evolve play around with the ship's concept of. I'm not quite sure what you're thinking of, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the complaint is, and it's an understandable complaint, that, you know, we sold these packs last year, and here we are, and we still haven't come out of shut down, closed, top secret beta. You know, we still haven't moved out of that. But the reason for that is because the smaller vessels weren't as popular as perhaps they might have been, and we've had to rethink again and do something else. And I suspect this is going to go like this for a while, guys. I suspect we're going to be like this for a while. But we need to get something into the game that people can play on a regular basis. So we need to get to a point where we can introduce something that gives players some satisfaction. And I think we're getting there now. You know, we're getting close to it now, in my humble opinion.
Scarpa, I can tell you right now, if you guys ever just need to make massive amounts of money, all you have to do is take a Tiger and put it on some floats.
You've really got an obsession with this, haven't you? With
He's got it all figured out.
Actually, speaking of aircraft carriers, not asking about aircraft carriers in game mode, but if there's going to be a collision model with these boats in War Thunder, does that mean I will be able to land a plane on it?
It's an interesting thought. I really don't know the answer to that. But aircraft carriers right now are in a similar ocean to submarines in terms of what we're planning. So, you know, because they're not an easy thing to practically use, are they, at the end of the day?
I mean, from my understanding, submarines in World War II were really just PT boats that had the ability to go underwater.
Well,
They
nothing
couldn't have
special.
the surface before firing.
Iron, actually, I have an idea for you. You do have the PO2, right?
Yes.
PO2 landing on a PT boat.
Going
Do it.
full speed.
Do
Yeah,
it.
what about the torpedo tubes on the Fletcher? There's a fair open space there. You might be able to get them down on that.
Oh, trust me, I've spent many hours trying to land the Tu-4 in a carrier.
Oh,
I
I
think I
know,
can
but
spend a
I've
few
done the
hours.
same. I've done the same. What can I do that's really stupid, but I need to try and do it? Yeah.
Just load up a podcast and sit back and try and do it.
Quick diversion here. I want to give a quick shout out to Bowtime Gaming and TBLF who have shown up in the chat. Thanks for coming out, guys.
Hello, lads.
I got all the YouTubers out today.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like they put out some sort of like announcement or whatever. Somebody must have gotten the word out.
Mom, get the camera. I'm on TV.
Yeah.
I just looked at your viewer numbers there. I've
This-
got. Oh, that's
What
it. See you guys. Bye. That many people just makes me nervous.
How many is
Stop
it?
it, alright. Just imagine they're all naked.
No, please. Please.
This isn't helping things.
Oh, he's definitely staying now.
Yeah, I think overall, just to sort of round this first topic out, you guys are going in the right direction, at least for now.
I'm sure you'll tell us when we're not.
Oh yeah, we'll tell you. We will tell you.
Well, let's be honest. I'm sure everybody and their uncle will tell us when we're not.
But yeah, like since you guys did the rework, things are definitely going much better. The gameplay feels more fun. It feels much more in depth now, and I can't wait to see what else the future brings. All right,
Yeah, me too.
so moving on to the second topic, and this is going to be a bit of a loaded question, and I realize that this is going to stir up some interesting discussion in the comment section here, or
Scott, close your ears.
the chat. So generally, what are our thoughts on the massive power creep going on in Tier 4 ground forces?
Now, there's not at all a loaded statement. What is going on with the definitely happening this minute, and we've got no question about it. Power creep going on. How come I don't see this when I'm playing? Am I just rubbish and I just don't notice these things?
I don't know. Maybe some of us have slightly different perspectives on the way we look at the game.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'm just old, I know.
I think it's like when you play like 7 hours of this game a day, which is not me.
It's very
Maybe.
sad. You know,
It's
you really
kind of
want-
like, oh, you then end up hitting this wall of like the same match over and over and over again with the same result every time. And you're like, oh, it's that vehicle again. I know exactly how this game is going down. Not
So
that I play
are you
6.7
saying
lately.
we're getting into the territory of formulistic gameplay where
Not
players are
really.
bringing
It's,
the same things in again and again?
I'm not too sure about 6.7 like in the last month or two because I haven't played that much, but from my understanding, once upon a time, Germany was like, yeah, we have the Königstiger, the best tank that ever existed, going up against IS-2s. And then the meta changed with the slightly more and more powerful tanks being introduced at BR 6.7. But Miles, I think you're more qualified to talk about it than I am.
Well, I mean, I think I'm mostly referring to some of the new generation of the extremely powerful premium tanks that we've got. I know that you guys are doing some battle rating adjustments coming up. You guys just announced that yesterday, right? So,
Are you verging towards IS-6 here by any chance? Is that-
Yeah.
just slightly, you know,
Do you
Maybe,
realise what
maybe
a rubbish
not.
tank that is to play? Do you realise what a terrible tank that is to play? Have you actually played it?
Yeah, and
It depends on where you go. The IS-6, honestly, when you get up-tiered, it's not that good because then everything penetrates you.
That's the problem with it.
the
It's
problem when you
somewhere-
get down-tiered.
It's somewhere in the middle of that, isn't it, really? And I think that's possibly...
yeah, I think, I mean, the IS-6 is just one example of this, but they're especially that crossover point between Tier 4 and Tier 5. There in ground forces, there is a definite case of where there is a lot of vehicles who are almost broken when down tiered, like they just crush all and everything before them.
I think that can be summed up with BR compression.
Well, I'm getting to that.
BR compression was something that's been discussed for a long time, isn't it? And the plan is, I mean, you don't hear too many complaints about aircraft now, do you guys? You know, in terms of matching up with each other. You get the odd person who says, you know, why can't my Heinkel beat whatever, one of the top jets, you know, and that sort of thing. But you know what I mean? Generally, they tend to be matched well because we seem to have lost that compression there.
This is a fair point, actually. I remember a couple of months ago where the aircraft BR compression was a big talk, especially in the upper jet tiers, where battle rating 8.0 essentially was just useless because they would always get up tiered against 9.0s and they just didn't have a chance. I have to say, it doesn't happen as much in aircraft anymore. I think there are more players maybe around battle rating 7.0 or around those battle ratings, since there are more jets as well now. And as such, 8.0 don't suffer as much. And some of the 8.0s that were more effective, of course, were moved down to 7.0, which of course helps.
Yeah.
But I do definitely feel a very similar thing happening in tanks right now. Anything above battle rating 5.7, I think battle rating 5.7 is where the problems really start for myself personally. To the extent that I really enjoyed playing tanks back in the day. I really enjoyed playing realistic tanks. I play both realistic and both arcade mode, so that the guys in the chat don't call me a specific bias scrub. But the past couple of months, I've really just not felt any joy in playing top tier tanks.
What's your chosen mode? I'm not
both of them. Both of them. I play both arcade and realistic.
Equally.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And I found that 5.7 always was a difficult battle rating, since you would most of the time be up tier to 6.7, being 6.7 the most popular battle rating at the time. But what we're seeing now is
the higher tier's not got anywhere else to go, and that's the problem with that, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, the problem is, yes, it's the more and more tanks that are being added, and we've seen a trend of more and more high to top tier tanks being added over the past couple of patches. And we're seeing more and more tanks that have more advanced armor, better guns, better penetration, stuff like that. And it's the definition really is power creep. Tanks that were very, very good before, like the King Tiger, for example, are now in a situation where their guns aren't quite good enough to deal
you could
with
tell
the. Can I just hold on? Can I just please finish the argument here? These tanks, when they get up tier, they can't really deal with the opposition effectively, and their armor isn't of any use because of course the tanks at the up tiers have no problem penetrating them, especially with the heat FS that's very abundant at the moment. But they still suffer from the weight of the armor, so they aren't mobile at all. This kind of goes down to the triangle, to the holy combat triangle of tanks: armor versus armament versus mobility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tanks that are mobile and have a good gun, like for example the RE251, they can do well everywhere. They honestly can. You can put an RE251 in top tier; it will still do fine. Tanks, however, that rely on their armor and such suffer in mobility, and when they don't have the gun to really deal with the upper tier tanks, those really tend to suffer when they get up tiered.
How often are they getting up tiered?
On a pretty regular basis. Like
a lot, is that measured, is it?
Well,
of course I don't have any stats here.
We don't have any official statistics, but the thing, because of the way that because especially with the top end battle rating right now is 8.3 for tanks. And because of that, it separates a lot of the top tier games from the 7.0 battle rating games, and as a result, a majority of battles at tier 4 are actually 7.0 battles, not 6.7s. If it was just 6.7 on 6.7, there wouldn't be as much of an issue here. The problem is that a lot of these 7.0 vehicles, while very, very good, and some of these vehicles should be very good, otherwise it'd be kind of pointless to go any higher, they're getting good enough to the point where they are simply just making a lot of these 6.7 vehicles irrelevant. A great example of this is IS-6. IS-6 at 7.0, because it doesn't face very many top-tier games, it gets down-tiered more often than it gets up-tiered. And by a significant portion, too. I basically jump into my 7.0 tanks and almost never worry about getting up-tiered. Occasionally it happens, but it doesn't happen enough to the point where I'm concerned about it.
We're in a situation with the IS-6, which is difficult because
yes, I understand that.
The first problem against it we've got is, oh my God, premium vehicle. And automatically everyone's thinking, World of Tanks, you know, this is an overpowered vehicle that players pay for. That's not the mentality. Despite what everybody says, that isn't what we're doing with these. You know, these are,
of course,
yes, we earn money out of them, but it's not about trying to get in an overpowered tank because Russian company, you know, and that's a favourite argument. But the issue we've got with the IS-6 is, I guess,
tier 5.
Well, no, because the battle rating of it is, as you know, calculated around how it actually performs in the game when it's being used.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily player stats, it's a combination of a lot of things. So the problem we've got with it is that people who are using an IS-6 are people who buy the tank because it's a good comrade tank. And it doesn't matter that all my other tanks are tier 2 and tier 3. I'm going to buy an IS-6 and then I'm going to take it in and use it abysmally. I'm not going to use it very well. So of course you've got all these players who are not performing particularly well in this vehicle. And when you look at the stats about how the IS-6 is actually performing, when you look around and have a look at it, you'll see that it loses more games than it wins. The bottom line of it is, yeah. So that tends to drag it down every time. We want to push it up, but we need people to be able to play with the thing properly, to be able to push it up so that they can then compete. So you're stuck between this rock and a hard place all the time, but not wanting to scare somebody who buys it off, you know?
So what I'm hearing is that I need to make a guide.
A guide, what, on how to play a vehicle badly, so that you can get it dropped down into you.
Shouldn't be too difficult to do. Isn't that what we do on a regular basis, guys?
Well, look, what percentage of our players play armoured vehicles incorrectly? What percentage of our players have to go head to head with tanks? That's the thing you got to ask yourself.
Well, I think this also stems from the issue. This is very much connected to the issue that a lot of people are bringing up. I know Slick B brought this up recently. That the reason why a lot of people are moving towards the IS-6, especially, is because the Russians really don't have anything else to play at that tier other than other 7.0s. The 6.7 battle rating doesn't exist, basically, for the Russians.
This brings us to the other part of the problem, doesn't it? Because we are still filling in the gaps, okay? A lot of people say, well, why don't you put this vehicle in? Why don't you put them? Why don't you slot it in there? Why don't you do this? And why don't you? But we're trying to fit things in places that will take the load off the other vehicles around it. And bottom line, we haven't got thousands of models all sitting there waiting to introduce into the game. We are on the fly building these models as we go along, and bearing in mind that each model is an individual model. It's not a copy paste, unless it's the same model with an extra aerial on it, but they're not a copy paste of another model. So it takes time to get them in, and it's kind of always been our problem, I guess, isn't it, that getting things into the game. But you're absolutely right. There's gaps, there's compression, as you call it, that needs to be, the load needs to be taken off, and we need to keep pushing vehicles into the game to take that load off the rest of the world. And that's why I mentioned aircraft, because that is kind of exactly what we've done with aircraft. We're at a point with aircraft now where we got hundreds and hundreds of the things, you know, all filling in slots and moving to the right place and all this. We have to then put them in at a particular battle rate. And well, people always say to us, well, why don't you ask us where we should put it? And I'm thinking, yeah, right. We ask you, and Joe Blogs will want it at tier 1 and battle rating 2, and Fred will want it.
2.0 battle rating, please.
Yeah, but this is what you're up against.
1.0.
But this is what you're up against. So we have to be a bit strict with it. We have to
of course. I mean, and to some degree, the community doesn't know what it wants.
Well, yeah, no, the perfect game for you, Space Cat, Mike, Miles, and Iron. I don't know what your name. I don't know what your name is, Iron, but Iron. The perfect game for you has a player base of 1. That's the bottom line of it, because everyone's got a different opinion on.
That's true.
They might have the same favorite vehicle, but this is the problem we're up against. And it's trying to please a majority, and the silent majority tends to be happily muddling away in game and not worried about what's going on with us guys and you guys. And then you've got the addicts and the history buffs and the people that know exactly what they want, and they're all the ones giving us the shout. So we've got to try and balance everything off and not appear too distracted from it. I hope over the last couple of years you guys have seen us trying to interact more and take feedback more. It's not been easy to get to this point, but we've got there to some degree where there is actually an effect you guys can have on the game just by talking to us in a normal fashion instead of calling us Russian bias and all this sort of stuff, you know.
Of course,
we can be nice to you and not always angry and shouty.
Yeah, well, why get angry over? I can't understand that. Why do people get angry over computer games? It's crazy.
Warframe has a very dedicated community, I have to say.
Dedicated is one thing, psychotic's another.
That only happens when people get too dedicated, let's say that. People have put a lot of time into this game, and when you have games like this where you put a lot of time in, you tend to get very emotional about it.
But the other thing is, isn't it, our game, whatever else you say about it, as well as being beautiful, we all know it's beautiful, but our game tends to create complete opposites in emotion. There's no middle ground. You know, you're either really happy or you're really angry, and it's crazy, really. We're a menace to ourselves, to be honest.
I mean, like, when you were talking about the silent majority, you reminded me of a friend I know that plays this game. He has like 500 hours in the game now. He just plays German RB and tank German RB, and he's very happy with the game. He just plays the game. He doesn't interact on any forums. He doesn't interact in pretty much anyway. He just plays the game. That's it.
That's it then. It's social media that's our problem. We need to ban social media.
What are you, British
We
government?
need to all move to China.
Yeah, but I know what you mean, and I understand what you mean, and we all understand what you mean. And it's quite sad that we can't just come up with a magic solution to this. I know there is a perceived magic solution for each of us. For every individual of us, there's a magic solution. But it's not an easy task. It's quite funny that the smoke grenades being introduced. Just shut me up if you want me to shut up, by the way, because I can talk for Great Britain.
It's fine. Continue your thought.
The smoke grenades, for example, right now, they were a fantastic, in my opinion, addition to our game. They were always on the cards, but they were a fantastic addition because they've given us a new aspect to warfare on the battlefield. So we've introduced these smoke grenades. We've tried like hell to get them as accurately positioned and ranged as possible, but we're still getting called all the names under the sun because I don't know if you follow Reddit, any of you guys, but there was one topic that made me chuckle, and it was one where the Panther was showing these smoke grenades coming out the roof. And you know, majority of people were saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous. Why hasn't it got launchers?" But the fact of the matter is, there is a hole in the roof with a launcher in it. You know, and you think the influence the rage has over people. You know, they'd rather rage than investigate what the actual situation is. So we're also being driven by that aspect where you've got, I won't call it ill-educated, but
well, I think we can summarize it in the sentence that thinking is hard.
Well, it is when you're playing a game.
People don't want to think when they play. I mean,
but I'm just trying to illustrate there is never any easy answer to keep players playing the game, you know. And I know we get the, "Oh, your player base has died and nobody's playing anymore," but I mean that's a lot of cobblers, you know. Our player base has pretty much been the same over a long time. What we need to focus on as Gaijin,
if there's one thing I will call BS on, is that the player base is dying.
Well, what we need to focus on as a company is perhaps trying to push more towards what Wargaming does, you know, big PR events, stuff like that, and maybe we can encourage more then. But it's never been a focal point with us. Our Anton and Kirill, the twins, the bosses, if you like, they are absolutely amazing guys, so intelligent.
Somebody's getting a raise.
No, they know that. When you're at a game show and you've got these two guys that are in charge of the company, and there's a problem occurring at the game show with the software, and they're programming it on the fly, it's quite impressive to watch, you know, what they're doing. And I'm thinking, how in God's name do you get to a point where you can just do that? But these guys, they have to make money to keep the company going. You know, we can't do anything about that. But they're so dedicated and have so much love for their creation. It's just quite incredible. And it's what we've been now, 6 years? Has it been around since World of Planes?
I think I started playing in late 2012, like September 2012. Is when
yeah,
I
but
joined.
you're obviously a noob then, aren't you? Really?
Get good.
I mean, I've been working for the company for 5.25 years. 5.25 years. It's crazy.
Wow.
You know, and it's the same game. I mean, I'm gauging, and I have other games on the go with Russians where we're promoting, like Enlisted, for example, and things like that. There's other stuff on the go, but it's still War Thunder's our flagship, always has been, you know, and I guess it'll always be like that for a long time yet. But the dedication stops us from taking the greedy path. We're not greedy. I don't care what anybody says, we're not greedy. We're just making a living, really. I don't know how I ended up here.
We did veer off the topic a little bit there.
I believe they call this conversation, though, so that's fine. Yeah, like steering back on, trying to get back on track here. So yeah, like there was I know that some of us may have in various videos over the past few months have posted different solutions to IA6, and I wanted to see if any of us had some good solutions just off the top of our heads that we can maybe put forward.
I think we're focusing just a little bit too much on the IS-6 here, but I would personally say the IS-6 classifies one of those vehicles that is very hard to balance because of the way it's set up. It's a tank that has good mobility and very good armor, but a kind of crappy gun for the battle rating it's at. And those things are intrinsically very hard to balance in the game. Another example would, for example, be the Jumbo Sherman, the 75mm gun. Remember one time when no one would play that thing because it was at the battle rating where the gun wouldn't pad anything?
Oh, it's
then it was down tiered, and then all of a sudden would get 15 kill games. The IS-6 is kind of in the same category where you can't really ever perfectly balance it. Either it's going to be too strong or it's going to be shit.
Yeah, I mean, especially with, and I think it's even more, again, we don't want to focus on the IS-6 here, but I think it's the best scapegoat for this, honestly. It's also at a really, really interesting place because you guys, as a policy at Gaijin, are not going to make any tier 5 premiums. And so simply up-tiering it creates another issue in the fact that you're allowing people essentially to buy tier 5 premiums at that point. And, I mean, even though the bonuses may not reflect that, but matchmaking-wise, it does. Which makes it even more difficult. I mean, because I'm sure that many people in the chat right now would agree that the IS-6 does need to be balanced a little bit and does need to be looked at. And there are also other vehicles that many people would argue that need to be looked at. I know that a lot of people are not particularly fans of facing T-34, or the American heavy tank T-34 and T-29. I don't see a problem with it personally, but that's just me. A lot of people I know have been complaining about the RU-251. People were complaining about the M46, although it's being up-tiered. We do know that, so that's going to be no longer as much of an issue in the near future. I know that some people have been complaining about the British, but most people don't. I don't think a lot of people have a huge issue with the British at all.
Nothing wrong with the British. The British are what they are. They're historically accurate, positionally, if you like.
Yeah, and personally, I've maintained that ever since I got into the higher tiers of the British tech tree, that the British are the most competitive nation, pretty much across all tiers. Because if they get up tiered, it's not as big of a deal because of their nature of having high penetration, fast firing guns, being able to deal with most of the vehicles that they are up tiered against. So for me, it's never really been that much of an issue. Although some people, I know there have been rumblings that people are like, oh my god, the British are winning so many of their games. It's like, well, they're good tanks. Um,
And they're not winning that many. I certainly can't win too many.
well,
They're enjoyable. They're enjoyable to play. That's what I find. Really.
yeah.
This comes back down to the combat triangle, really. The British have this really nice balance between armor, mobility, and firepower. Especially the firepower is really nice with that high penetration APDS shell. The Russians rely mostly on mobility and armor to some degree. They don't have the best guns for the battle rating, but they can definitely hold out. You have the Americans, which honestly I don't know what they do. They do everything.
Yeah, the Americans are like jack
nice.
of all trades.
Yeah, and then you have the Germans, of course, which rely mostly on armor. At the upper tiers, they do rely mostly on armor, which I think is their downfall, really. They don't have enough mobility for the most part, and the guns start to suffer against the heavy tanks of other nations.
I
can't get on with the American ones. I just can't use them, and that's another aspect, isn't it? Really, it's personal whether or not you can use them.
It's personal preference at the end of the day. Yeah. Everybody plays differently, and everybody has their own unique style of doing things. Whether or not that's actually a good way to play the vehicles is an entirely different topic. But
well, I think the vehicles tend to play you, though, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, no, they do, because you fit in to that particular brand of strategy, if you like. And this one's comfortable. I can use this one, which is what I find with the British. I haven't even played the Japanese much, so I can't comment on those.
The Japanese, I feel overall, we're just going to veer off here very, very shortly. I'm going to bring us back here in a second, but I think the Japanese overall just suffer from a lack of vehicles. There's
a real shortage of imagination with Japanese, I guess, isn't there?
They are not honorable enough.
I think there's plenty of potential candidates out there. We just haven't seen very many of them yet. Whether or not that's because the higher ups in Russia are deciding to release them piecemeal, or some other reason, not clear. But I doubt you would probably have any insight on that either, seeing as you're community manager. But
on the way they're being added.
Yeah, like they seem to be added very slowly, very piecemeal, as if they're saving a lot of these vehicles for later.
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. We don't have a rack of vehicles we're waiting to put into the game. The problem with the Japanese, and it's exactly the same as what we experienced with the Japanese aircraft, is credible information. Yeah. We've been ably assisted by certain members in the community who've had some information available, but we've still got we've still got a problem with credible information for these vehicles. That's always going to be a problem, because of what happened when the war finished.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, when are we getting a tier 1 premium OI track link? Just the track link, not the rest of the tank.
I'm surprised somebody in here hasn't brought up the mouse turret yet. That's always a favourite. But
that's an even more in-depth discussion, I think.
I think that needs a whole week on its own to discuss that.
We could sit here for hours just debating that. Let's see.
It lost me when it got to the Mark 1 turret with the Mark 2 vehicle, and the Mark 2 vehicle with the Mark 3 turret, and the Mark 3 turret should have been on the Mark 1 vehicle. And I thought, I've lost the will to live.
But yeah, I mean, I put out my video a few weeks back on the Germans, or I think it was last week. I put out a video on the Germans and some of my potential solutions to the Germans, which basically involved dropping the Panther II back down, and dropping the Jagdpanzer 4.5 to bring it in line with the RU-251, whether that means bringing the RU-251 up to 7.0 and dropping the Jagdpanzer 4.5 down to 7.0 and making them equal in tier. Because I think the biggest issue that a lot of people have whenever these new powerful premiums are introduced is that there's no regular tech tree equivalent. A good example of this is the T-29. When the T-29 was brought in, it was the best heavy tank America had, period. The T-32, while very, very good, it suffers from a 90mm gun that is pretty good at, say, 6.3 or 6.7, but it's really starting to show its limitations at 7.0. Whereas the T29...
Doesn't that suffer from depression problems as well? No, seriously, isn't it one of those vehicles that's quite nice, except you can't really get a decent angle to aim over Brow Hill?
Well, historically, it only had 5 degrees of gun depression, but in game it does have 10 for some reason.
Does it?
Yeah. It was one of those things that the U.S. realized on the T-32 prototype that it was a problem that they could only do 5 degrees of gun depression. But if the vehicle had gone into service, they would have fixed that issue.
Presumably, nobody's reported that because it's an advantage. So I'll just make a note here. Right, okay.
In before T-32 nerf.
I'm just making a note about this. It needs fixing so that it isn't as powerful as it is at the
American
moment.
tanks, fun. We can't have that.
I'm joking. But I mean, again, if we're told about it, we will eventually do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, but again, going back to my main topic, is that the big issue with introducing a lot of these more powerful premiums like IS-6, RU-251, T-29, is that there's no regular tech tree equivalent. I don't think anybody complained, or very few people complained about the Tiger II SLA-16 being introduced. While it's a good vehicle, it's not that much different from the Tiger II-H.
It's just a faster Tiger II, essentially.
Well, it's not even faster. I think it's like yeah, it's the same exact speed. It just is a little bit faster in maneuvering.
Yeah, but we do have an issue with Germans, though, don't we? Where we just haven't got anything that is specifically German that can fill a missing area, I guess, you know, without bringing in the Americans or the British.
Maybe not specifically German. I was discussing this with a friend the other day. Have you ever heard of a vehicle called the Panzer 58?
No.
It's a Swiss vehicle, and it was built.
Oh, the Mutz.
Yeah, the Mutz.
But yeah, that's fine. But that is premium material, isn't it? It's not
necessarily. I could see it as a good transition vehicle between the Panthers and the Leopards, because it's fast and maneuverable like the Leopards, doesn't have the armor, but its gun is significantly less powerful. It has like a very, very long 90mm gun. It was modeled off the German Indian Panzer program.
How many of it did they build?
Of the Panzer 58? Quite a few. It was in service with the Swiss military for quite a number of years, and they upgraded it incrementally. So it was like the Panzer 61 was the next variation, and then the Panzer 68. And I think it was either the Panzer 61 or the Panzer 68. They actually fitted the L7 105mm gun into it. And they kept that in service for quite a long time until I think they replaced it with Leopards, I think? Or Leopard 2s. So I think it'd be a great transition vehicle. Of course, we'd have to make an official suggestion for it to give more information on it. But I think that would be a cool vehicle.
But you know, make no mistakes. It's not like they're just going to ignore it and not do anything with it. Whatever the gap is, they're not going to just ignore it. But I think what you raise here is a valid point, and we keep mumbling to ourselves that we've got to do it sometime when we get round to it. I guess we need to update where we're going with the vehicles in terms of what's coming and that sort of stuff. That would certainly probably help a bit, wouldn't it? It's been a while since we've done this is where the tree's going type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one solution.
But it's just, it would give at least you guys an indication of perhaps what the plans are for that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, sorry.
Did anybody else have anything to add? I mean, I know I talked quite a bit.
I don't know if you heard what I said, but part of the issue was with aircraft, we had this perceived problem of compression, blah, blah, blah. It isn't really a problem now because we've managed to fill out the tree. Well, the same applies to tanks. The situation will improve the more stuff we shovel in there. Yeah. At the right level, I mean, at the right tier.
Mm-hmm.
All right, shall we move on to the next topic?
Sure. Mike, why don't you lead us off on that one while I type something?
All right. So the next topic on the list is the Italian tech tree overpowered? Now, I'm going to start off here with my own opinions first, and well, my own stat testing. Disclaimer, I have not flown any Italian aircraft besides the G55S, and the jets. So I'm not even going to comment on the rest of the air tree because shitstorms. What I can tell, however, is I already did a video on this. I remember when the thing first came out, everyone and their mother was calling the G55 SOP. I had like a 95% win rate during the first 20 games, but it's not because of the aircraft itself. The thing is, when new air trees, when new vehicles in general get introduced, people don't know how to deal with them. And when people don't know how to deal with something, they tend to do mistakes which play into that particular vehicle's favor. In the case of G55S, for example, the aircraft is good at turning and has good guns. It isn't particularly fast, however. And what I saw time and time again was American pilots try to turn fighter with the G55S and then calling it overpowered, or going into head-ons against an aircraft that has 3 MG151s in the nose. Doesn't work like that. So in the case of G55S, I'm going to say it is not overpowered, but I do not know about the rest of the tech tree. So maybe one of you guys has more experience in that.
Italian tech tree looks very nice, but I don't know enough about it. I don't tend to play it.
That's kind of the story of my life as well. I mean, the only plane I have experience with really is that 4-engine bomber with the 102 howitzer. That's it. I haven't really played anything else.
Of course, you would go for the big guns.
Yeah, of course.
And
there was an interesting. You're struggling to pick up some discussion on this, but there was an interesting topic that I came across, which was about the tri-engine bombers, and it was specifically on this case discussing about blind spots on these bombers.
Oh yeah, how they couldn't shoot directly behind them, and then
yeah.
I think it was this.
It might be an interesting thing to thrash out here. You know, what do you guys think about that?
Well, it's just kind of sad that that's how they were designed. They were originally passenger planes that had to be retrofitted for war, and I guess originally they weren't designed to have a machine gun sticking out of the butt. They had to fit on bathtubs, but even those bathtubs couldn't cover the rear blind spots, and it's just something that people have to work with. I mean,
they do, but it feels like it's kind of handicapped, doesn't it? This is the problem that players have with it. It's a handicapped bomber. Make no mistake, bombers right across the board, whatever nation you're in, have all got points that are weaker than the others and some blind spots as well. But it seems to have come, and I don't know why it's been raised so much, that the Italian, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Sciamar, what is it? S-79.
Yeah, that's what I call it. I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, that one. But I mean, I love the look of the aircraft. I love flying it. But it's an interesting thought that, you know, that most bombers have got points that you can't protect very well, and yet for some reason the poor old S-79 has been focused of many people's attentions, and I'm not quite sure why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with the slightly unpopular opinion that the Italian tech tree is not overpowered. And
I don't think it is from a remote point. No.
While the Italian tech tree is very competitive, there's a difference between competitive and overpowered. And I think the Italians do possess some serious weaknesses. I'm not talking about tier 5 here for the most part, guys. I'm talking about tiers 1 to 4. I don't really have a lot of experience with the G91 personally. I have it, but I haven't played it all that much, so I don't really have an opinion on, or I don't really have a solid opinion on it yet. But the Italian aircraft generally suffer from a couple of things. Horrible energy retention, and low top speed. So the Italians, basically, if they're trying to fight somebody who's above them, they're going to have a really hard time. And I think the problem here is not so much the Italians, but more so the teams that are facing them. A lot of the Allied teams are trying to fight these guys at low altitude in their element. I mean, it's like dogfighting a Zero. Are you going to try and turn with a Zero in an F6F Hellcat? Probably not. Or in a P-47 for that matter, especially. Like why would you do that? You're just.
But you shouldn't be turn fighting in a P-47 anyway.
Yeah, and the fact that people keep doing it and then they complain that the vehicle's overpowered, that really makes me question whether or not they actually know what they're doing.
And there was much rejoicing.
But that indirectly has an effect on the aircraft and what aircraft it's going to come across as well, doesn't it? So again, it's a rock and a hard place, but yeah. The Italian aircraft look beautiful, as far as I'm concerned. I think the Italians did a wonderful job designing those things in the first place.
Oh, they definitely look delicious. Actually, Mats, if you were touching on...
Are we getting towards pizza and pasta now? Because, you know...
I'm definitely not going to make a meatball joke. Last time I tried to do an Italian accent, people were ripping into me in the comments of that video. Never again. But
the funny thing is, the ones that are ripping into you are not usually Italians. It's usually everybody else.
That's a fun thing. When I do any other kind of accent, people don't mind. But when I do an Italian accent, for some reason, everyone gets offended. I don't understand it.
Yeah, comrade, no problem.
The comrade. But yeah,
that's not Italian.
Oh, what were you going to ask, Mike?
Right, you were mentioning the opposition that they faced. This is actually a very interesting point, which is something that I really liked seeing with the introduction of the Italian entry. Up until then, the Germans were in a position where, especially when they are facing off against Americans and Brits at the same time, the Americans and the Brits have aircraft that complement each other very, very well. We have the Americans that have very, very good high altitude performance. They're very fast. They have great engine retention. The guns are arguable now with the 50 cal buff. I personally still don't like 50 cals. Fight me. But yeah. Then you had to complement with the Spitfire especially, which weren't quite as fast as the Americans, but they had very good climb rates and they had very good turn rates, which would make life as a German fighter pilot kind of hard when you had to face two vehicle types at the same time. Myself, or a Spitfire by itself. But when I had to deal with a P-51 together as a BF-19 pilot, I had no problem dealing with a P-51 by itself. With the Spitfire, I would have massive, massive problems because I simply couldn't outrun the Americans and I couldn't outturn the Spitfire. Yeah. And this has kind of been turned around now. What you now have is German and Italian teams in which the Germans have the climb rate, they have the engine retention, they have the speed at altitude, and then you have the Italians that perfectly complement them with having heavier armament and better turn times, which means that you now have this kind of mirror image where the Germans are like the Americans and the Italians are like the Brits.
Yeah,
and it's something that people aren't really used to.
That's very interesting.
It's really a dynamic I really like thinking about.
The Japanese, the Japanese and Russians, where do they fit in all this?
The Japanese can kind of fend for themselves, though. Yeah,
the Japanese do have very good vehicles that can do pretty much everything at top tiers, and the Russians to some extent as well. The Russians are very good at low altitudes, and since that's where most of the battles end up being at anyways towards the end of the matches, it's quite nice.
It's funny, the Italians and the Russians I've found, especially in some of the I don't really play very many Russian aircraft, except in, say, a few tank battles, but on the few times I've gotten put up against Russians in my G91, or not my G91, my G55S or my G56, I found that the Yakovlevs and the Italian G55/G56 are very closely matched. And it really comes down to who's going to make the first mistake at that point. The Italians, in my personal opinion, have slightly better armament. I'm not very good with the Russian cannons, but that's just me. And the Italians may turn slightly better as long as they keep their speed up, but they can't retain that speed for very long. If the Russian could simply outlast the Italian aircraft in a turn fight, or in a maneuvering engagement, the Russian can win.
So, educate, what's the best turn fighting Italian aircraft?
Either the I've really only played a couple of them. And that was the G55S, the G56 I put a lot of time into, and I've heard really good things about the MC2 or the C202 EC with the 20 millimeters.
The C202 is very, very nice, but then again, they were already beforehand, just except for the pasta guns, which were upgraded.
Yeah. I'd say that the Russians are definitely faster.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. The Italians are really slow.
Yeah, I mean, and that's their principal weakness. Also, like I said earlier, the Italians do not hold their energy retention very well. They've got a good couple of turns in them, and then after that, they're a little bit too slow to continue that fight for much longer. And they will start to lose a maneuvering battle over time. The key there is to outlast them before, without getting blown out of the sky by their 20 millimeters. which often doesn't happen from what I've found, at least facing Allied teams like an American aircraft or like the American aircraft especially. The British fare a little bit better, but not by much. Also, the Allies have a really, really bad tendency, and the Russians are guilty of this too, of trying to go head-on with a lot of these Italian aircraft. Stop doing it!
Guys, this is a very handy trick in any kind of... If you are facing something that has more guns than you, that has bigger caliber guns than you, and that has them all mounted in the nose, when your guns are all mounted in the wings, don't go into a head-on.
More engines.
That too. And more pilots. Oh, the days of people trying to head on my AT-219. It was glorious.
It still happens a lot, doesn't it? The head-ons, but it's a natural tendency, to be fair, isn't it? Really, you're always going to end up in that situation where you're having a duel.
Sometimes head-ons make sense, but if you have the advantage already, it doesn't.
But our pro pilots, they're all up there laughing at us all doing that down there, so it's fine.
Well, I mean, I personally don't know. Actually, I should rephrase. Guys, do keep on going head-on. Feed me to kills.
Please, keep doing it.
I'm just thinking, like, all the people watching the stream are probably like, I'm just taking an estimate here, but RB players, and I'm just thinking, go back to the good old days when I'd be in arcade battles in my IL-2, head-oning everyone in that tiny little mountainous map.
Yeah, the IL-2 was the go-to aircraft to go head-on with.
I remember when that thing could outturn Spitfires.
Yeah, arcade, I think
it was just memes. I think my very first video I ever did was on the IL-2.
One of my first videos was on the IL-2, but that was a long time ago. Back before it was nerfed into oblivion. Granted, it was way too powerful, but it was still fun while it lasted. I remember flying that thing before squadrons even existed in the game. Oh, that was a long time ago. But yeah, going back to the Italians, overall, I think most of us are in a consensus that the Italians are not overpowered. They have significant issues. However, they are very strong and very good at what they do.
Is it an issue then? Is it, the reason you're asking it, is it an issue? Because I haven't noticed that being said, and that's a terrible
I see it on the forums occasionally, a lot of the time on Reddit. I'll see people complaining about, not as much anymore. It was more prevalent in the early weeks of this last major patch going live, when a lot of people really didn't know what was up with the Italians. I'm sure that there are still plenty of people out there who are very, very salty and are taking every opportunity they can to deconstruct everything.
But that's probably about not understanding how the Italians work, which is what you guys have gone into.
Yeah, I think that's the main problem right now.
Yeah, it's a new nation effect. It's a new nation effect.
Are they turn fighters? Are they
energy fighters? Are they?
Yeah, or are they in betweens? Yeah, I get that. Okay.
Now, there is one particular aircraft that might be an issue in the Italian tech tree, which is something I've seen the community talk about a lot, which is the Italian F-84G. I'm not going to go to follow all those guys that say, oh, why do the Italians get a better F-84 than the American do? That's not the point.
Well, it's better air.
It is, the Italian F-84 is the... Fuck. Sorry.
God America can't produce the best aircraft.
Yes. Essentially, for those of you who don't know, the Italian aircraft, the Italian F-84 does perform better than the American does in terms of raw engine performance. And many people complain that the thing has the same battle rating as the American F-84, despite performing a little bit better. Now, I personally don't have too many issues with that. Then again, I don't know how to handle 50 cal, so whatever my opinion is worth. But I see a lot of people complain about that. Scarborough, I don't know if you have played Italian jets or something like that.
It's not an old aircraft, is it, in the game? It's a new aircraft.
Indeed.
You're going to get a lot of pilots who are striving to get that aircraft, and when they get their grubby mitts on it, are going to fly it however they want to fly it. So it's not going to be flown well.
I think it's also. I do think it's worth noting though that the Italian F-84 is a much later version of the F-84 that we already have in game. The Americans is the F-84 B model. This is the G model.
Yeah, it was a cutting edge aircraft. That's kind of key about it, wasn't it? Because they were trying to incorporate a lot of technologies from a lot of different, all the best stuff from.
I'm not aware of when the Italians got their hands on the F-84. And which versions they specifically got their hands on other than the F-84G. But I do think it's worth noting that the American version is an earlier model, so that might contribute to why there's a performance difference between the two. Also, it is worth noting that the F-84G, at least in realistic battles, is a higher battle rating than the American F-84, which is a 7.3, or which is a 7.0. Italian 7.3, American 7.0. It is worth noting those two things.
Okay, Drew, I didn't know about that. Sorry about that. But in effect, the matchmaker is going to be very, very similar.
Yeah, the matchmaking is going to be similar, yes, but it is worth noting those two facts: later model and higher battle rating to compensate for it. Yeah, I mean, overall, I don't think there is an issue with the Italians. It's, again, I think a lot of it comes down to, like we agreed earlier, it's the new nation effect, or it's the new tank effect, or it's the new aircraft effect. People see it and they go, holy shit, how do I fight this thing? And a lot of people are going to fail because it takes time to learn these things. Yeah, is there anything else that anybody wants to add to that?
Not really. I think the 10 discussions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's done.
Okay. I think we kind of we've kind of touched on this overall as we've gone this next topic as we've gone through here. How is the game balance as a whole? How would we see it on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being perfect and 1 being I'm leaving the game?
I'm guessing we shouldn't really waste too much time here, so we're just going to go with scores.
I'm interested to hear what you guys think, though. I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, but there's a lot of different things that would have to be talked about and researched in better fashion, as to not say too many bad things.
Well, you mean you can't give us a score then because you'd rather prefer?
Oh no, I can give some scores, but I just can't go really into detail about every single thing.
No, that's fine. But I'll just generally, what is the feeling?
Right. I'm going to separate between aircraft and ground forces here, since we have
idea.
this whole discussion before. In terms of aircraft, honestly, my own opinion is a solid 8, if not a 9. I'm really liking where aircraft are right now. I'm really liking to play aircraft. Pretty much every nation. Of course, there's the occasional aircraft that doesn't really work too well, but hey, that's all right. Most of the aircraft are really, really nice to play, fun to play. Jets especially, I'm having a blast with jets at the moment. In terms of tanks, given the old discussion we had before, anything up to 5.7 I really like. So I'm going to give it as well a 7, 8 out of 10. Above 5.7, you start to have all those issues where it goes down to a 6 to a 5 out of 10, my own opinion.
Mm-hmm. I know personally, for aircraft, I don't really play aircraft very much. I'm more of a tank guy, but I really haven't been enjoying tanks as much as I've been having as much fun in aircraft, to be totally honest. Especially since tier 4 and tier 5 are mostly my jam. I'm not saying I hate playing lower tiers, but they aren't my preference. I prefer to play in the upper areas, and because that area is in such turmoil right now, aircraft wise, I'll give it a solid 8. I'm sure that there's issues out there, but again, me not being as much of an aircraft junkie, I wouldn't know the exact issues. Ground forces wise, like Mike said, anything below 5.7 or below, I would probably say give it a solid 7, and then for tier 4 and up, or anything above 5.7, I will probably give it like a 6 or a 5, maybe a 4 on a very, very bad day.
5?
Prepare for ban.
Fair enough. Next.
User mini bars will always be banned from War Thunder.
Actually, Iron, you haven't been a bit silent. What's your opinion on the game?
Well, here's the thing. I actually think... oh, God, I'm just looking at these comments, but anyway. I think the game is actually pretty balanced in some regards. It's just kind of in high tiers when you get that compression of BR and you have like a few jets here and there that people are not really happy with, and same for tanks. A few of these tanks that people are not happy at top tiers, but other than that, I very much enjoy the game. In balance-wise, especially in tank battles, I can see a very easy dynamic of rock, paper, scissors between different types of tanks and how they work. At BR 3.7, it's one of my favorite BRs to play at because I know all the tanks of that tier are perfectly matched against each other. They've all got advantages and disadvantages, and you've got to use your player skill to figure out which battles to do and which not to do. it just works, I guess.
That's
I
very
don't really know how to
positive
evolve it,
comment.
but
Thank you.
and I think balance is definitely getting there. I mean, very early on in tanks, when there weren't too many of them, I remember when America was still around, you were still fiddling around trying to adjust VR ratings, and the American tree now is pretty balanced, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially the Americans. The Americans have been helped a lot by the addition of a few vehicles, namely T-34 and finally fixing issues with a lot of the American tanks that have been sitting around a long time. There are still plenty out there.
Although actually, one point I didn't really cover those Japanese vehicles because I don't really touch them that much. I don't really know what's going on with them. I look at them, I don't really take them out that often.
Well, I think, like we said earlier, the Japanese simply lack a full tech tree. If they had a lot more vehicles in their tech tree, I think that the Japanese would be a lot more interesting to play on a regular basis. I'm not saying that they're bad. In some places, they're actually pretty good. The problem is they just suffer from a very big lack of content to keep people interested.
Oh, here's one point actually. Could it be a cultural thing? Is in like every other nation in the game, like Russia, well, just the big ones, for example, like Russia, Germany, Britain, those tanks you've seen have normally been in a lot of films. They're very iconic, built in many numbers. All different kinds of media have covered those vehicles before. So when you see a tank in the game, it's like, oh, that's the T-34. You're so familiar with it. You just see, you recognize it immediately. You know what it is. You know the history behind it. When you see a Japanese tank, you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good question for the chat, actually, if you don't mind, really quickly. Guys, how many of you have started playing the game of one specific vehicle? Be it stuff like the P-51 Mustang, the Tiger, maybe? What kind of vehicle has gotten you into the game?
Oh boy.
Actually, that's a good question for the host as well. What has you gotten? What has gotten you into the game?
Who, me?
Yeah.
What keeps me coming back, especially right now, is the Americans. The Americans are getting. The Americans are definitely feeling much better now that they've been rebalanced a little bit. They've gotten a few new toys to play with. A guilty pleasure of mine recently has been taking the jumbo in and just seal clubbing people. Thanks, Iron. You have now created a new sinful act that I must pursue.
Become one with American 4.7. Embrace it.
People are saying Tortoise, M26, M8262. Also the Italians. The Italian aircraft. Like I said, I'm not much of an aircraft guy anymore. I used to play aircraft quite a lot back in the day when that was the only thing. But I've just been loving the Italian G56. It's unlike the G55S, which suffers from really bad dive speed retention. The G56 doesn't suffer as much from that. And it's pretty much the same airplane, just with a slightly more powerful engine and a better top speed. So, personally, like some of the American Tier 3s, a few of the Tier 4s, in their ground forces, and the Italian tier 4s and Tier 3s.
For me personally, I think the single vehicle that made me want to start War Thunder in the first place was the P-40. I don't know why it's the P-40 specifically. I think it might have been because of a movie I watched. Captain Sky and World of Tomorrow, something like that.
Oh,
I can already see the Twitch chat going, what? That movie is shit!
That was a cracking film. I really enjoyed that film.
But honestly, DP-40 is such a nice looking aircraft. At the time that I started playing, it wasn't the most performing. Now it's actually really good. It got buffed a couple patches ago.
Oh, you mean started the game? I thought you meant coming back.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
the
started
game.
the
I'm
game.
sorry.
I was wait.
No, like,
aircraft? Where did you start? But yeah, the P-40 is really nice. And fun fact, the P-40 is one of the aircraft that has the most camo options available to it.
That's true.
It's really nice.
It's a nice aircraft, and the British version is similarly as lovely as well.
I think there's a Russian one as well.
Wow, 11 camos, you weren't lying.
But it's funny. I mean, what brought me into the game? There wasn't anything in particular. Because obviously, yes, I am a player, and I was a player before I became part of Gaijin. But it was the iconic aircraft. One of the things that attracted me to the game in the beginning was the idea of I'd lost a Gladiator. Not many aircraft games produced models
That's true.
as what I would say are obscure to many, but familiar to many others in a game. And the Gloucester Gladiator was a lovely little aircraft, always loved it. And subsequently, we now have another one of my favourite aircraft in the game, the Sunderland. And it's not because they're a great fighter, it's just because they're iconic aircraft to me.
Of course, that doesn't stop people.
Oh, I've got to ask, have you been down to Duxford, RAF Hendon?
Yes.
Oh, you seen? I'm guessing you've seen the Sunderland there, haven't
Yeah.
you?
Like the Sunderland is an absolutely beautiful old girl. She's absolutely beautiful.
Actually, I got a bone to pick with you. Where's my mid-air reloading out?
Where's your what?
My mid-air reloading. It has the bomb racks I can slide in and out, and apparently could carry 2 times the load it carried under the wings on the inside. So theoretically, it should be able to do mid-air rearming.
Have you ever complained about it to anybody official?
No, I have not. I'm just an angry internet person.
Yeah, I'll just sit and moan about it. You're the sort of guy that goes to Reddit and complains about it.
Yes, oh my god, the devs don't listen to. Have you tried actually speaking to it? No, I haven't. Why
But
should I?
look, she's beautiful, isn't she? You can say no more. It's just such an unusual aircraft.
Not even an aircraft person. I can.
Actually, I'm more of a boat person.
Yeah,
just
well,
said
I am. I'm more in the naval stuff. Maybe that's why
I was just kidding
Sunderland.
because the Sunderland is basically a moving battleship.
But you know, let's focus on what it also did, as well as drop things on submarines and shoot things. It also did a lot of air sea rescue stuff. You know,
That's
and
true.
it's an important. The Sunderland's a good old workhorse. She was.
You with your Sunderlands and your
And of course,
P-51s.
the Chieftain guys. There's nothing better.
Oh yeah, the Chieftain is a really nice tank.
Chieftain, I used to fix them for a living in the army, so they're one of my
I imagine
favourite
that has a
vehicles.
special place in your heart, kind
Yes, it does, and people take the mickey out of me all the time over it.
of. I can't imagine what it was. That much fun to work on at the time. I
No,
don't know.
it was a nightmare. A terrible, terribly underpowered vehicle with what they used to do with the Chieftain, and it was the Mark V I'm talking about here.
Uh-huh.
What they used to do with the Chieftain is they used to bore out the engines to a larger capacity to get more power out of them. The problem with that is you made the skin thinner between the water jackets and cylinder. So you always ended up with blowing head gaskets and such like. So it was a diabolical and absolutely terrible. It was underpowered basically. And the other thing was about the particular Chieftains I used to come across was they had a tendency to what we call run away. The engine would feed itself and it would get faster and faster and faster. And the only way to shut it up was to sit on top of it, unbolt all the plates and the air intakes and everything, and get I don't know, a fire cover sign, you know, that you have over fire buckets with sand in them, and push it against the air intake. That's the only way you could shut them up. And if you didn't, they would go that fast that the hydraulically driven cooling fans would go faster and faster and faster, and eventually they'd take off and go through the roof. Absolutely. Things like that is what makes them kind of a special place in your heart. You know, the other thing, changing a fire extinguisher on any British armoured vehicle, and I've worked on a few of them, was a deadly task if you didn't do it right, because if you did it wrong and you engaged it, or you take the safety pin out before you engage it, there's a potential for it to go off. And a few of the guys I used to work with, you know, they had all sorts of injuries, like bits of their nose missing and things, where the BCF extinguishers, which are high pressure, would go off before they'd mounted them and rip their noses off, you know, and things
like a grenade.
that. Yeah, but they didn't explode. It's just they shot like a rocket. So
Scarper, you said the engine fan would take off, right? So when can we expect a Chieftain attack helicopter? It's totally historical accurate.
I was thinking more of a carrier landing, but
well, what did you make of our helicopters, by the way, guys? You know,
I don't know very much about them, unfortunately.
I really liked it. The controls were a bit awkward at times, but
well, the game was never designed. The game was never designed for helicopters.
I think you just ported it over from an earlier Guardian game, didn't you?
Yeah. But it was an amazing.
Catchy air assault.
To be honest, it was quite incredible how we managed to get the damn things to fly in the game. To be honest, and
They weren't horrible. I mean,
No.
obviously they needed more refinement if you were ever going to actually put them in the game, but they were acceptable for what we were doing. Yeah,
they were fun at the time.
they were fun, yeah.
They were fun.
Hey, honestly,
Well,
I
they were fun for the ones who were flying, and not so much for the ones on the receiving end.
I remember more than a few flying ATGMs hitting me right in the face before I even left the spawn. But yes,
One of them might have been me. I'm sorry. I abused the attack helicopter so bad it's
Anyway.
not even funny.
Oh, Chieftain, best tank in the game. End
It-
of.
I-
Pokia T-32s in your T20.
the Chieftain, in
British
my
bias
personal
confirmed.
opinion, well, actually, the Chieftain is my favorite top tier tank in the game, right behind the mouse. Not because the mouse is good, just because I like the mouse.
It's
that's
not
like
because the mouse is
Sunderland,
good.
isn't it?
It's because the mouse is thick, right?
Extra
Exactly.
thick.
It's like the Sunderland, isn't it? The Sunderland.
Yeah. Thoroughly, completely impractical for anything other than just sitting there and being shot in the face over and over, but it has character.
I mean, if I remember correctly, you can make 3 Tiger H's with the amount of metal. Oh, and a Panzer IV with the metal it took to make.
Is this the one that's mounted on the battleship?
No, just
One day.
One day.
I
Well,
expect to see this for April Fools next year.
Oh yes, please. Just
we're pretty good with our April Fools, aren't we? You got to give us
Like,
credit.
holy,
We're
like,
pretty good
always
with
above and beyond with them.
Yeah, we're
Honestly,
gonna get
and
the.
this is not even trying to suck up to you guys, but honestly, the War Thunder April Fools events are some of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
We're gonna
like
get a
every
barge
year.
with a bunch of mouses on it.
Yeah.
Mice.
You
Is it
remember the
mouses
bal-
or mice?
Remember the
Yeah, I think
balloon
it's
tanks?
Mosin.
Oh,
The
yeah.
other tanks. Oh, and the potato guns. Oh, Jesus.
I think
that was
next to
pretty
the
much
ponies,
before that World of Tanks, wasn't it?
Oh, no.
I remember the
no.
ponies.
No comment.
Congratulations.
The ponies were legit.
One of
No.
those jet fighters.
Alright guys, I think we should get back on topic
Oh,
here,
that's
shall
true,
we?
Yeah,
that's true,
sorry.
Yeah, overall, I Space Cat, did you add your feedback in? What do you think of the overall balance?
I'd say for tanks, pre 5.7, it's like 10 out of 10. Like, I don't think there's a single problem except for maybe the Easy 8.
You mean
That's
the
kind of
Gamma?
at a weird. Yeah, no, the Easy 8.
Really?
Yeah, it's just kind of at a weird spot right now, I think.
I haven't had an issue. Okay.
And post 5.7, I'd say it's at like a 5 out of 10. Particularly
dear.
at high tiers.
Another low one. Oh, dear. But mind you've got to put that in perspective that we're talking about fewer vehicles there that are suffering that.
Yeah.
Thank God
True.
for that.
But I think that the gameplay is different enough between those tiers that it warrants being separated.
Well, it'll get better. That's all I can say. It will get better. We'll get there.
We hope so.
My opinion, officially, it's a 10 out of 10 across the board. For it.
Of course.
Unofficially, I haven't got a clue because I don't care. I don't really. I don't. I just go in and shoot at things. That suits me.
Hey, at least you're
There was
honest.
much rejoicing.
That's all we can ask for.
The advantage we got in the game is that most vehicles can actually do something to most vehicles. There are exceptions, but you know you can do something with them. So it's always a challenge, is the way I look at it.
By the way, chat, I know I haven't been keeping up with this, but thank you for everyone who's followed, hosting, and subscribing and so on. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna cover quickly a couple more topics, and then we're gonna do a Q&A session where kind of like an ask us anything for a little bit. Please keep it PG, guys, and keep it relatively focused on the game.
I
But
might be asleep by then.
so get your questions ready so that way we can do our best to answer them. All right. So what are our thoughts on smoke shells? I think they're
Yeah,
great.
I hinted on that, didn't I, when I was talking about the smoke grenades on Panthers? Sorry about that.
And there was much rejoicing.
Alright, so smoke shells are one of the new additions to the game, a whole new mechanic which completely revamps gameplay to some extent, although I don't see many people using smoke shells correctly just yet. We'll have to wait for a couple more people to actually learn how to use them properly. But, personally, thank Godzilla for smoke shells. Oh my god, it's... so many
guys,
times.
are you talking about shells or shells and grenades?
Everything, the whole mechanic in general.
Okay, smoke
But
screens.
smoke screens aren't quite as useful in my own opinion. They're nice for retreating, but not much else. But smoke shells, they are just so versatile. You can lob them into the face of the enemy and blind them completely. You can cover an entire avenue and advance to the next capture zone instead of just camping in the back and fearing for your life to get shot at. Smoke shells, honestly, they are nice. But, and this is very important, I'm still waiting for pots to be added to the game, just so I can say that I smoke pot.
The perfect game for you is a game of one player.
Let me guess, it's a special update on the 20th of the April as well. Just for you.
Oh,
Pots
dear.
are now a 3D decoration you can put on tanks.
Literally just a garden pot.
Yeah, I think that Mike really hit the nail on the head right there. That smoke shells, smoke grenades are a huge game changer, especially at tier 5, considering the fact that you have to deal with things like ATGMs, which I won't say they're point and click adventure game type-esque thing, but they're point and click adventure game type-esque. Having that ability to retreat out of a position or to advance over open ground using smoke is an incredible asset. It's something that cannot be underestimated.
You're introducing guesswork for an enemy, aren't you? You're pushing him to actually take a guess rather than a sure shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mobile bit of cover. I mean, that's what it is in the end.
And you're about to say something, Space Cat?
I was just gonna add something quickly. If you have a mouse ATGM and you're not shooting at planes, there's something seriously wrong with you.
You guys know that not everybody manages to do that, don't you? You do know that some people just cannot get the hang of it.
I've done it a couple
What?
times.
You're saying that not every single player is a top-tier professional player?
No, but it's just you make it sound like it's point and click for everybody. You know, hey,
Oh no!
welcome
course
to
not.
Monkey Island. It's
I'm talking more about the second generation ATGMs, not necessarily the first ones. The first ones do require quite a bit of or I won't say a crazy amount of practice, but they do require practice to get down. And to be used
it still
effectively.
upsets people that these things manage to hit them behind the wall as well, doesn't it?
I've yet to do something like that, but I know many people have.
Yeah. It's like closing your eyes when you come onto a roundabout, you know, and looking the other way. That means nothing else is going to hit you if you close your eyes. But yeah, I think, yeah, I agree with you guys. The smoke shells has put a whole new strategic element in it, if you like. It's introduced some new gaming mechanics to the game, especially at high tiers, and that's got to be a good thing.
There's just one thing I really wish people would realize. This kind of an old BF3 trick that I picked up a couple of videos ago. The trick with smoke shells. The trick with smoke shells is not to smoke yourself, but try and smoke the enemy. Oftentimes I see people just randomly dropping smoke shells everywhere and hurting their team more than they are helping them.
Are you back on that
topic
again then, talking about smoking the enemy and smoking yourself?
Sorry, what?
Are you back on drugs again, talking about smoking the enemy?
No. Proper tactical applications now. It's actually
not something that's ever appealed to me, I'm afraid.
No, honestly though, it's simply better to smoke the enemy because the simple fact is when you drive through the smoke, you can't see anything, right? So when you emerge from the smoke, you are very confused because you have no idea where the enemy is.
Yeah.
As such, when you are smoking yourself and you go out of the smoke screen, the enemy has all the time in the world to see you before you ever see them.
Yeah, it's in the bush in the middle of the field. Yeah, I know the trick.
Exactly. So when you smoke the enemy positions instead, it makes it easier for you to
What
shoot.
about lobbing smoke shells? That's the ones that go in the barrel. What about lobbing smoke shells at open top vehicles? What's your experience been of that, guys?
I haven't done it myself. I think they do damage though. I've heard that they do damage.
Yeah, they have 50 grams of high explosive filler.
I just wondered if any of you have used them to actually in combat. That's all.
You probably kill like a Type
Not
60 with
offensively.
it, or an ACU.
Actually, now I'm wondering if anyone has ever shot down an aircraft with smoke grenades.
I was just going to say the same. What about shooting down aircraft with them?
Probably
PRB
good.
gonna make a video, guys.
Send it right now. Send it to Thunder Show. 3D.
Gotta get that first coverage.
But that's got to be an interesting viewing dynamic as well, isn't it? With a poof as it explodes near the aircraft.
I mean, it really would be kind of anticlimactic because you can see anything.
Do smoke shells actually render in for plane users?
Yeah.
Yeah, neat. Yeah, okay. Gotta give that a go then.
Everybody sees everything that everybody else sees in a game. So.
Hmm.
I mean, one thing I like
apart from offensive camos that are installed on your own computer.
But how else would I have all those tons of anime skins at 4K resolution?
Oh god.
We're back on ponies again. Oh my god.
But on a serious point, though, what I like about Smoke is that it's introduced a new dynamic to the game because kind of overnight it changed the way some matches would go down. Don't remember the name, but on one of the desert maps, I was in the Cobra tank. I was being shot at by like 3 people. I just couldn't handle it. I was on the cap point, so I just started popping smoke shells in front of me. Not to be offensive, just because I was getting fed up or being shot at. So I sat there, popped the smoke down, did a few repairs, but they couldn't see, even though I was in the middle of the open, with the smoke down, they couldn't see me, and I was just repairing there happily.
You know,
Before,
you
I would've just
sound
died.
almost like a professional soldier talking like, I popped a smoke grenade. You know, that's so warfare-like, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
just nice. Like, I wouldn't have done it before.
look, naval guys, we've got opportunities for smoke in naval combat as well.
That's true. I'm looking.
Destroyers, for example, they used to use smoke in the funnels, and it was
Yeah.
basically burning oil, wasn't it? But there's
Question regarding that, actually. Are you guys planning on modeling the direction of the wind to potentially affect where the smoke goes?
I would say probably, but I don't know for sure. I can't answer.
Ah,
I'd say
Sounds
that's
like
probably
game-
way
There's
down the
someone
line.
at Gaijin just crying right now. Like one of the game engineer devs is just sitting there like, I'm giving her all she's got. Leave me alone.
But the thing is, you know, we've got the potential for weather effects. Where we go with it is another matter, but that's a bit of shining up the brass bells and everything as we get further up the line, isn't it, really?
Somebody did mention in the chat here, I think that's something that's worth mentioning since we're on the smoke subject, is the issue that that anything glass, like headlights and stuff like that, does actually reflect.
Oh
smoke.
yeah.
If you have like 2 big headlights on the front of your vehicle, you've got that does appear through the smoke, and that does not cover them.
It's a general issue with the game, really. I remember doing hide and seek game modes with the ASU-57 for thing was brightly visible even in the dark night because the light was reflecting off the small windows.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Scarpa. Are you aware of that issue?
No. I'll investigate if it's been reported. If it's not been reported, guys, please make sure you report it, please, so that we can track it. You mentioned headlights. I wonder why. Maybe we headlights.
Yeah, it's funny. Anything that's made of glass.
Yeah, like viewports, headlights, they
Viewports
all
as
shine
well.
through.
Okay.
Yeah, and like, not all viewports. Like the ones that are like, if you're looking at say like the Centurion Mark 10, and you see like the commander's cupola and then the gunner's sight and so on that are like sort of like white glazed over kind of thing. Those don't show up. But the headlights on the front of the Centurion Mark 10 do show up. For example.
I haven't come across that, but I'll certainly investigate it because that's something that probably needs sorting.
I don't know if it's gotten me killed all that much, but I do know I have gotten quite a few kills or I've been able to damage people through smoke because I can just see their headlights and determine where they are.
I'm guessing about an issue with reflective surfaces in the game.
Yeah, it's not that the lights are turning on.
Didn't we suffer something like that with aircraft and clouds?
I think so. Yeah, like we're
There
like
was
the
reflective
Yeah, the
Yes.
canopies.
It's the same issue.
Okay, well, I just encourage everyone who's watching and you guys, if you can, to make sure you get it logged. I'll certainly have a look into it and see what I can find out.
All right, cool. Okay, so I think we've thoroughly covered the smoke shells. Let's go back. Let's go to our last major topic here, and then we'll do a short Q&A for a little while. I don't want to keep everybody up until the crack of dawn, but we'll have time for a few questions, I think.
I'm starving.
What's the next big thing we are excited to see Gaijin introduce? I know for me personally, French tanks. Looking forward to it.
AMX 30.
Of course you would like your tanks.
Hey, what can I say? I'm a simple man. I see tanks, they go boom, they got armor, I'm good. I click.
There's actually something that I've talked about with Scarper before, which is the World War mode.
Yeah, that's worth mentioning.
You know you send French tanks. What about Italian tanks?
Honestly, there's one major reason I don't want Italian tanks. Just because the Italian jets have so many damn rockets. Scary.
But I just think French tanks are likely to be a little bit further up the road because probably logically the next thing on tanks is going to be Italian tanks, I would think.
I don't think that the little 70mm Hydras can pen tanks.
And then it's like
the H-Warriors.
If we go for French, then it's likely to be French aircraft first, wouldn't you say?
Well, we do already have a couple of French aircraft.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, well, we already had a couple of Italian aircraft, didn't we?
My whole thinking was that the French tank tech tree would be significantly bigger than the French aircraft tech tree.
French had quite a few aircraft. It's amazing how many aircraft a lot of air forces had that you don't even think of, you know. Anyway, yeah, okay. What else then? What other things are you looking forward to, guys?
There has been talks for a long time now about international tech trees, for example, for nations that don't really have exactly enough vehicles to fill out a whole tech tree by themselves. Put them all into an international one. Stuff like Swedish jets, for example.
It's been an ongoing, let's say, community-based project with half an eye from Gaijin to see what's going on with it. But it's difficult because everyone and their uncle wants vehicles in there, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you're saying, because there's like tank destroyers. Swedish had a lot of decent tank destroyers, didn't they?
Swedish tank destroyers, for example, or even the Italians have a problem with... I think Miles has more authority on the subject, but from what I've understood, the Italians did have some nice tank destroyers, but the tanks themselves weren't really all that great.
Yeah, they're all riveted.
They were riveted in construction. They were basically late 30s designs. The most modern design the Italians were considering putting in the field during the Second World War is called the Caro P40 or the Caro P26, and that was like kind of in between like a Panzer IV and a Panther. But even then, that thing was a 1940 design, and it was still riveted in construction, and they only built a few of them. I think they were basically prototypes. There's an incident that I always reference whenever I talk about Italian tanks of an ambush by a group of British 6-pounders, by battery of 6-pounders in North Africa. There was a column of Italian tanks out in front of this battery of 6-pounder guns, and they had HE loaded. Well, they fired these HE rounds at the Italian tanks, and when they got hit by this 6-pounder HE shell, it blew half the rivets off the vehicles, and they disassembled themselves. And this is an actual combat report. You can go look it up. I don't remember the exact specifics.
So basically, it knocked the heads off them, is what you're saying. Whatever happened, it knocked the heads off.
It's kind of like hitting a Lego set with a hammer. Like the tanks just I wouldn't say they shattered, but they just fell apart.
So what you're saying is, if Italian tanks ever come out, we're going to see a lot more KV2s in the game.
Well, there's going to be definitely a lot more HE rounds flying about, and I imagine a lot of them are going to actually be very, very susceptible to hull break. If you guys model them as they probably would be IRL.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just all riveted tanks as a whole just get a 25% or something hull break multiplier.
Yeah, I mean, however, the one thing the Italians do get quite a bit of is assault guns and tank destroyers. While most of their I guess, best quote-unquote tank destroyers are just basically self-propelled guns. Basically, these tracked chassis with a very, very big gun stuck on it. And it open-topped, that sort of thing. But they do have quite a few of, say, their Semovente tank destroyers, or assault guns, I'm sorry. Not really tank destroyers, but that's where the Italians would really shine, I think, if they were put into the game as ground forces. And then at tier 5, they would basically have a couple of Leopard 1 copies. And that's basically what they would have. The French, the reason why I say the French on the other hand is because the French, while they did surrender pretty early on, the French did have a significant amount of tank development going on when they tried to restart the tank program, their tank development programs.
Yeah, the ARL 44.
The ARL 44 is a prime example of that, which is basically kind of in between a Tiger 1 and a Tiger 2. It looks very, very similar to a Tiger 2, but it's on the Char B1 chassis, with a new turret and a high-velocity 90mm gun, but they just simply didn't have the money at the time to build the things, so they scrapped the project. The French would also be extremely unique in the fact that they experimented with a lot of oscillating turrets and autoloaders, drum-type autoloaders.
Yeah.
Especially,
the French were cutting edge, for a long time. When
the French get a bad rep, but they're generally pretty cutting edge in a lot of their weapons development, especially their small arms, their tanks, some of their aircraft.
You look in later years when you're talking about desert conflict, with the Sino War and all that. They had some cracking machines that were shipped out to Israel and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, the one that a lot of people are referencing a lot is the M50 and the M51 Super Shermans, which are Shermans armed with a French 90mm and or high velocity 90mm and like the M51 an even higher velocity 105mm gun.
I think we get it that you're a real tank freak, aren't you?
Just a little.
Oh,
what about the rest of you guys?
Probably good for me.
Well, what about the rest of you guys? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm kind of a jack of all trades players. I mean, we're already seeing ships and boats being introduced slowly. I personally am not really too big of a fan of naval combat. I don't really play any other naval combat games, so I don't have too much authority on that. In terms of aircraft, the aircraft tree is pretty much fleshed out. I would say maybe some new jets, but then again, I do have a soft spot for the Hunter, just my own personal bias. But in terms of World War mode, I mean, that's one of the big things with War Thunder, right? It's been in the works for years now.
That's on the visible horizon. Let's see, that's now close.
Yeah, that's been announced recently. From what I've heard, there's stuff going on soon. TM has gotten likes to say, Scarper, you being in the inside and you having messed around.
I've tried what we've currently got for World War mode, and I'm not going to go into detail about it because basically I'm not allowed to, but having experienced, and it's the only one I can use as to compare, having experienced World of Tanks, World War type thing.
Clan Wars?
Clan Wars, yeah, but it was basically supposed to be like a World War mode, wasn't it? What we've done and what our developers have created stunned me, and I was so impressed. It ticked so many boxes for me. And I think you guys, especially if you've got a power champ for enduring confrontation and stuff like that, you're probably going to enjoy it. But it isn't just that, there is more to this, and it's something I think we should all be excited for, and that includes random players as well, because we're looking to get them included in a robust manner without taking control of the world and causing chaos, but
what? Gaijin actually cares about the little people? What?
Nah.
Well, they make up a lot of our player base. We can't get away from that. I personally don't know why you would want to play an online game on your own unless it was purely to appear elite. But from my point of view, we've got to, and there is an opportunity for these guys to get included as well if we can get it working right. And what I've seen so far is fairly polished. There's some bugs and glitches, but it's fairly polished. it's not complete by any stretch of the imagination because there is so much that can be done with this mode, and I can see that having experienced it. It's just really good, and that's the only reason I mentioned it to you in the first place, buddy, is because it is really impressive from my point of view.
Can you tell us anything about the way that it functions?
Not any more than you've seen already, I'm afraid. I just can't, all right? Because we might change direction with something, and that would just create so much chaos out in the player world.
Damn you, NDAs.
But look, it's not. I know we always say, "Oh, it's soon," or "It's very soon," or "It's impeding," or "It's DEFCON 5," or whatever. But we are going to start seeing it very soon. Okay.
Actually, there's an interesting point you made earlier with enduring confrontation. What is going to happen to enduring confrontation once World War Mode releases?
Well, I think it's a natural view to see that when we introduced enduring confrontation, it was to try something out. Okay, it was to find out if something works and people enjoy it and blah blah blah. You can move that into the World War Mode. Okay, you can move it into it. There is some room for it there. The difficulty we have is catering to our types of players, because as you know, we got arcade players, we got realistic players, and we got sim players. And we don't really, although you get told differently, but we don't really want to lose any of them. You know, World War Mode's going to be difficult with sim guys. It's just you can't really fight big battles with you know, a guarantee of maybe 50 players at a time or something. You understand what I mean? You can't guarantee a progression or an organization that perhaps would do that. But we're hoping that our sim players are going to enjoy what we're doing as well. So we'll have to see. We'll have to try it. But
always nice to see some love for the sim community.
Well, the thing I've had on the go this past couple of weeks is there's a bunch of guys who are doing campaigns. I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah, the Battle for Europe.
Yeah, so
yeah,
I want
those people.
That's right. I want to try and help them and give them some support and maybe get more visibility for them to get them operating in a robot, because they are so committed to it. These guys are so committed to it, you know, and that's that's your sim player for you. So you know, we'll continue to support and do what we can for them. But at the same time, we have to cater to where our majority of players are. And the funny thing is, although we've still got a lot of arcade players, where our core is at the moment is around the realistic battles heading towards sim, or realistic battles heading towards arcade type players. It's somewhere in the middle there. But at the same time, we don't want to lose any from either end. So you know, it's not, we don't forget, we just need to look at how we can do it practically and robustly without scaring everybody away. But anyway, yeah, so World War Mode, soon, trademark, yes, but it will be soon. That is the next event on top of, if you like, naval battles. But naval battles and World War Mode can run alongside each other, whatever we're doing with them. It's not a question of one or the other.
Cool.
I hope that's giving you some positivity towards World War Mode, because I know it's kind of like, oh, it's only squadrons and all that, but it's not, really, it's not.
That's encouraging to hear. Definitely. I know that was a huge concern for many people.
Well, to be honest, when I caught sight squadrons, I thought, oh God, World of Tanks. And I remember how bad that was, because it all became formulistic, and it all became, we all take this particular lineup in, if you like, you know, and we,
and if you do anything else, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly. And that's what we don't want to do. We want to create something that feels living and breathing, if that's the way to describe it.
You want to create plenty of options for players and
options, and one of our things with our game, guys, whatever else you look at it, it doesn't have to make you sit up and learn about things.
That's true.
You know, the educational aspect, and it was kind of a byproduct. is so important in our game. You need to know what you're fighting. You need to know what you're sitting in and doing the fighting. You need to know what this was like, you know, and that's so important in the game. Anyway, it's going to be good, I reckon. I think it'll be a hit. And the other offshoot of it will be, he said with cross fingers, that people will want to create squadrons to be able to participate in an organised manner. You know.
You expect people to play together in a multiplayer game?
Well,
what are you, mad?
If you don't do that in war mode, as a squadron, certainly you're not going to get anywhere, and certainly as an individual player, you're not going to make any friends.
Oh man, we're going to have a lot of guides to do. I can already see it.
I'm just thinking, like, in games like PlanetSide 2, been ages since I played that, you had to technically work together as part of a group. Like, you would be in a squad of like 12 people, and those 12 people would be...
It's like the Battlefield thing, isn't it? Battlefield 2 and 3.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, like, PlanetSide kind of made an interesting mix between, like, arcade shooter, but also you could go... even though it didn't have different realistic difficulties, it depended on how tactical you were and how your squad setup worked. Like, 4 squads would report to one guy, and that one guy would be bossing around those 4 squads, which had 12 people each in them. So even if you were random, as long as you just had a mic, you were good to go. As long as you just followed the guy that pinged saying, go here, you pretty much game. You didn't have to squad up.
I think the best way to describe it is a solo player will feel like he's doing something in an enduring confrontation type of way.
Okay.
I guess that's the best way to describe it. So that's the very worst scenario, and it will only get better from that.
Oh, that sounds neat.
Okay,
there'll always be something for someone to do. That's
all right. I think we're gonna transition into a Q&A session, maybe say for about 15-20 minutes or so. Again, I know it's very, very late in the UK, and I don't want to keep you guys up that much longer. I know many of you guys want to go to sleep.
How are we going to do this? Are we going to pick maybe one of the questions out of the chat, each one?
Yeah, why don't we each pick a question? So people start leaving your questions down in the chat, and we will do our very best to answer them. Also, feel free to ask Scarper questions as well. He's here. Might as well.
Listen, guys, I'll do my best. I'm not a developer as such. I don't go in and program stuff, and I've got some forward viewing, but it's not masses as amount. Like everything engaging, all our work tends to be last minute, depending on what works and what doesn't work.
All right, I've got one. Let's see. Mort BA from Twitch asks, any idea of making infrared lights working? I kind of wonder what the potential use is for that, considering the rarity of night battles. Also, night sights would really only be useful for a couple 100 meters. So,
I guess like some of the early Cold War stuff. I mean, I don't know much about Tier 5 tanks, but does that stuff have a bit more IR?
They had like IR searchlights. But again, you may be had about a 500-600 yard limit. I know some of the more powerful ones you could go out to about 1 kilometer, but the problem with IR searchlights is, well, it's a searchlight.
So
you
pretty much it
you
means
really
you could
expose
have
yourself by doing that. So
actually, that's an interesting point. Instead of IR sites and stuff like that, what about proper searchlights where you had kind of a trade-off?
Funny, I was sitting there thinking that's kind of in the headlight and spotlight group, isn't it?
Like I can imagine spotlights in a night battle, in a proper night battle. On the one hand, they give your position away. You're like a massive target. It's like a beacon. Shoot me in the face. On the other hand,
I mean, the honest answer is, and it's been mentioned here, that although night battles appeal to a lot of us, they don't appeal to everybody, and we tend to reduce the number of that, so it's not priority. All that sort of stuff isn't a priority. It's something that everyone thought about, you know, but it's not necessarily a priority.
Yeah.
I guess I'm personally just imagining trying to blind the enemy gun with my searchlight. Just, hey, hi!
You remember when horns were introduced in World of Tanks?
I don't play War of Tanks myself, to be
No,
honest.
you must have played it sometime. Surely everyone's played it. But they introduced horns, and it was irritating as hell because everyone was tooting their horns all the time.
I don't remember
I saw
that.
footage of it. I mean, that's one thing that drove me to War Thunder when people earlier were saying why they came to War Thunder, was that I just saw the golden ammo thing in health bars, and I wasn't even much of a World War II buff. I just wanted to fly a plane and, well, drive a tank as well when that thing came out. That's what kind of, I don't know, led me to War Thunder. I didn't even know much. I couldn't tell you what the difference in a T-34 and a Sherman was before I started playing War Thunder.
Yeah, well, that's the education thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Piques people's interest. Does anybody else have any good questions that they're going to pick out of the chat?
I have a question, not out of the chat.
Okay.
Like, I just have a question for Scarper.
Oh.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer it.
Oh.
Are you guys thinking of going into the future? Maybe, well, not the future, but like maybe into the 80s.
Space Battle Twin, Star Wars.
Well, so what you mean
Cold War?
imaginary stuff from the future? Or...
No, I mean like kind of to like the 80s, kind of, and probably not the 90s, but like the 80s.
Introduction of like air-to-air missiles, composite armor, that sort of
stuff like that.
thing.
That's
And-
in the same bracket as have you ever thought about introducing World War I biplanes and stuff like that? It's there's a meta, the game we can push either end a bit every so often. You know, it used to be we wouldn't go much beyond 1949 or whatever, and then we pushed it a bit. Well, we can now include. I can't see that fictional war machines are something we are going to include in our game. It's difficult enough to imagine a tank with reactionary armor, for example, in our game. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, because we do keep pushing either end of the spectrum.
Well, you did have the reactive armor in the April Fool's event.
Yeah, that was April Fool's. That was something else. But as a meta for the game, I mean, as a regular meta for the game, that's something that we could do up to things that actually exist. But beyond that, I don't really see us trying to drag that in. But who knows? I mean, yeah, the game could expand to all sorts of areas, and they're all like separate sections after you've logged in. You know, I don't know, but at this moment, I think we've got enough to contend with getting what we have in game to some level of balance, using that old word again.
All right. Does anyone else want to add to that? Because I have a question here.
.exel in the chat says, what are you guys going to potentially add stuff like the are you guys going to add more user created aircraft in the near future, like maybe the OV-10A Bronco that Nova 29 has been making, or is there like a change in the policy, and how are you guys going to and how is the new policy going to sort of work out?
Well, I mean, the aspect of player-created content being introduced into the game, specifically, and I won't talk about skins, etc., but specifically models and cockpits is a good example, if you like. The issue we have, and it is an issue, is we do have some real high standards with these things. Okay, we have some absolutes that we have to meet, and because it is difficult to achieve that, we've even recently been involved with assisting players to do that, but it still takes time. So the limitation is kind of twofold. It's on how high quality a model can somebody create. I mean, I saw a beautiful rendition of several things. One in particular strikes my mind was a Vulcan, you know, Vulcan bomb.
Yeah.
And much as I'd love to have that in game, it's not in a condition we can introduce it, and it also doesn't really fit with the current meta yet. Okay, so it's difficult to bring that sort of thing in, but we also have a finite resource on how much we can commit to assisting. because we do have quite a lot of other stuff. I mean, War Thunder's not a game that you can say, we never give any extra content, never do anything, we're never developing it, we've just... And this is the difficulty, because we're always pushing our own envelope, it means we've got to keep supporting it by keep adding to it. But it's certainly something we are trying to encourage. We need players to develop things. We need players to produce things to include in the game. And that, you know, locations, aircraft models, tank models, whatever. We need all these things to be done on behalf of the players because we like that idea. But at the same time, it's a limitation on what we class. It's not because what you've done is rubbish, it's because it doesn't meet the standard we've got. We don't want to disappoint people, obviously, you know, so we've got to be careful we don't give false hope and things like that, you know. So that's the limitations. It's not the directive hasn't changed. We still want to do it. What is difficult is the amount of stuff that is being offered to us. And live is precisely the engine that we use to monitor and watch for things, and every now and again we'll give somebody a poke and say, oi, talk to us about this.
Scarpa, I have an interesting question here.
Is this ask Scarpa then? It's not asking you guys. You guys are supposed to answer questions.
Well, yes, but this question is actually specifically towards Garten in this case. So, a little bit of background, sorry. In my own opinion, a good player is someone who informs himself, who reads the stats, right? And War Thunder gives you tools for that. You can read the stats of the aircraft, of the tanks, you can see the armor models, stuff like that, everything. Even of course of tanks and vehicles that you don't have, except for rare event vehicles. This is a question by Mort BA. What about displaying special vehicles in the tech tree, now that we are unable to see specs of the E100 and similar vehicles? So, there
mean
maybe...
like ones that you haven't got?
Yes, for example, all the rare event vehicles, stuff like the PO2, TB3,
I'm
E100.
not sure what the thinking is behind that.
I'm guessing it's information, for example.
I guess if we display something that is not easy to get hold of, we'll end up with having hundreds of people complaining because they haven't got it. I guess. Perhaps. I don't know though, but I don't know what the thinking behind. For example, the Italians. Hey, sorry.
Perhaps, but on the side, it's, for example, a special case here being the E100, the tank that does appear in top ranked battle and is mostly driven by good players.
You know that. You are such a wearable.
Well, of course I'm German. What do you expect?
It's always the thing, there are Germans, isn't it? Can't you talk about something else?
No.
Okay, fine. I'll talk about the Russian bias, the I-301, for example.
Sorry, I was being humorous. I wasn't. We've got quite a lot of German guys in the team, and the abuse they have to put up with is incredible sometimes, but it's always good fun. Sorry, carry on. Anyway, the E100, okay, you think it should be displayed in the tree?
Yeah. Not just E100, like every special vehicle that is used, in my opinion at least, should at least appear in the special section, just so people can look at it, can check the stats, can, for example, in the tank especially,
can dribble over it and wish they had it, and can private message me and say, "Can you give me an E100?"
Well, yes. I mean, hey, on the other side, there would be
can you give me an E100?
Oh, I'm going to fight you guys to the death in the YouTuber tournament coming up. I'm getting my hands on it.
No, I don't know the thinking behind that. I that at one point I had loads and loads of S79s in my tree, and they suddenly disappeared. But I don't know. I knew they'd been backburnered because there was too many of them and all that stuff. But I'm not sure the thinking behind why we hide them from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It may be something to do. It just makes people jealous. It may be. I don't know.
But so you don't know the reason why it's being hidden, right?
Right.
So do you think maybe they could be unhidden one of these days?
Well, I can ask, I guess. But if I get the sack, I'll come and kill you.
I should probably run away. Guys, I'll see you next year.
No, I can certainly ask that, but I'm trying to think of the only reasons I can come up with are because it's kind of like an envy type thing, but I don't know. It may be confusing. It could be confusing though, I guess, because if you think in the standard tree, there's a lot of special vehicles that are hidden in the standard tree. And that may confuse people if they're there, but they can't get them.
Oh, it's too
I
you
guess we could get a new nomenclature. Like, for example, for the premium vehicles, you have separation vehicles that you can buy with G and bundle vehicles. So instead of having bundle vehicles, you could say event vehicle. And then
Yeah,
link
yeah,
to
and there is also, there's a limitation on space because we don't want it getting too weird looking on there, because we have we got a ridiculous amount of vehicles in the game at the moment.
Maybe just like a checkbox or something like that. You can check whether you want to.
I don't know. I'll investigate if one of you can remind me at some point.
I could now be really mean and mention how you said that there weren't enough tanks in the game.
Well, there isn't. I mean, there's never, right? There's never enough planes and never enough tanks, because we all want all of them, don't we?
Somebody else. I think we'll probably have time here for 2 more questions.
Oh, good. I got a question then.
Okay.
Hooray!
Okay, using our precious time to again annoy Keith, I'm also going to very loosely basically steal this guy's question and make my own question, saying, what is the process into actually getting a new plane into War Thunder? Like, who decides it, or the dev team's process, they think they want it, or fans say they want it, so the dev team looks into it? It's a loaded question, but...
Well, obviously, in the good old days, we used to have a work in progress tree, or where you could see what was coming. We used to announce, right, we intend to boot blah 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 blah. The devs will still have lists they work to, because what they're doing is they're looking to fill a particular shortfall in a particular area. So they'll look around investigating what's going in there, what could fit in there, and then they'll investigate the capabilities and the performance and blah blah blah. Then it'll be put in to design, and is this a feasible design? Can we create this in game? Because the model they use for the flight model, for example, every month that goes by, there's another piece of complexity that seems to go into it. Another tweakable item goes in for the flight model. So that's always increasing. So it'll be concept first. Can we do it? Is this going to be possible? Can we do it in a reasonable time? Do we have to change the core mechanics to get this in? Then it'll go into the actually. I mean, you can use any model you want to test a flight model theoretically. You don't have to design a model as such. They'll apply it to that, see if it's feasible. Then they'll move on to the graphical model side of things and start developing that. But I think Anton answered in Reddit not so long back about how long it actually takes to create a model, and I think Denise said a month or something for a normal aircraft.
3 to 4 months or something like that.
So that's the process, but a lot of it is about research, finding. It's not just a random grab, go and find an aircraft that we can put in the game. It's about where have we got a gap and what can we fit in there.
Okay, there's a couple of other things here. So Captain Balu, very, very rudely.
Captain what?
Balu. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Is it Balu? Is it the submarine type? Where is he?
I could be wrong. I'm just trying to find his question here. Back here a little ways. Basically, it was like, what is the ETA on decompressing some of the BRs in tier 4 and 5 ground forces? Are we expecting a massive decompression here soon? I know that you guys are releasing a new battle rating recalculation patch soon, but only a few vehicles are being affected. Can we expect a very, very large recalculation of the BRs across the board here soon?
Yeah, I mean, what we're working with at the moment is we have a major update, and I guess every 6 weeks, every 6 to 8 weeks we're doing major updates, which is, I don't know if you noticed, quite accelerated from what it used to be. We then we let the update run for a while, then we do an assessment on how the vehicles are performing in the game, and based on that initial sweep, we make some judgment calls and give it to you guys to say this is what we intend to do, looking to have some feedback from you guys to say, well, we think your calculation might be off with that, you might need to do that. But we need some validity to change these things. There's no limitation on what BRs we can change as such, within reason, of course, without knocking the game out of balance. But there is a limitation on what we can reasonably do, and it kind of is based on overall opinion rather than just a loud half dozen people's opinion. So it's difficult. It depends how cooperative the players are, and depends how reactive we are in picking up on that. But we, as I say, we try and do that roughly, I would say, about every 6 to 8 weeks. We're doing BR changes in between major update changes. We'll put it out to the community. Community will come back with a bunch of answers. Our tech guys will investigate these answers and either agree or disagree whether or not it's a valid one. Then we'll put it forward to them and they'll do some changes. So there's always usually some extra changes as well as the ones you see. Usually, I don't know if that's I mean, I don't control that, guys. You know, I just don't control that. All I can do is channel information in directions, but that tends to be what we do. That's the situation.
Okay, I think that pretty much does it for our time here, unfortunately. I wish we did have more time to cover even more of these questions, because some of these are actually pretty good. Somebody was asking about internal smoke dispensers, like the Russian smoke generators and stuff like that. Are those going to be potentially in? I think that we do need to set up some sort of way to submit some more of these questions on here, because some of these are actually pretty good. But I don't want to. Go ahead.
So it would probably just be better to have like any questions before the stream to make it a bit easier.
Say again?
It's probably easier to have like an email or something where people can send in questions before the stream, so you can select them easily.
You could do that. The other thing you can do, if you thought about it, is they could be asking questions during it, and maybe you guys could pop up and see one and then say, "Oh, we'll ask that one."
Actually, I did just remember that I'm going to be doing a Q&A with Dennis, the PR manager, in Karlsruhe, very, very soon. So when we get there, so I'm going to save a couple of these questions here, and I'm going to throw them in there. So if your question did not get answered, don't lose hope. It may still get answered when I do that Q&A. Hopefully that'll be soon. Fingers crossed. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Scarper. It was really nice to have you on here, and good to hang out with you and talk to you. Thank you guys for showing up and sticking with the stream the entire time. Again, if you have any further questions, please leave them in the chat. I will do my best to gather up as many as I can and put them in the Google Docs, so that way I can ask them to Dennis when that Q&A comes up. In any case, thank you guys for watching. Everybody else want to give their channels a shout out real quick?
Thank you guys, everyone, for joining in. Thank you to my co-pilots here, Space Cat, Iron Armenian, many miles away. Scarper, thank you very much for letting us occupy your time here as well, and letting us ask questions into you like holes. Miles, thank you very much for setting everything up. And if you by any chance don't hate our guts right now, you can always check out our channels. Well, you already know Miles.
Pretty much that. Everything that Mike said, except, yeah, Scarpa, thanks for putting up with us, pretty much. Or putting up with me, mostly. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. Go check out my YouTube channel. Just Google Iron Armenian. It comes up anyway.
Essentially, if you want dank carry landings, Iron Armenian. If you want dank tank memes, many miles away. If you want dank dankness, Space Cat. And if you want some German accent, me.
I think you mean Panzer medals.
Oh, god damn it.
You're never going to get away from that.
Okay, good night, guys.
All right, thank you so much.
Bye.
And have a good one, stream.